Welcome, everyone. It is July 8, 2024. Hope everybody had a very pleasant and safe July 4th weekend. If you would, please stand with me for our Pledge of Allegiance and our invocation by Councilmember Shaw. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So tonight I have a prayer for inclusivity. In this circle of discourse, let inclusivity be the bridge that connects us all. Like a mosaic composed of diverse pieces, so are our discussions enriched by the contributions of every individual. Through the lens of inclusivity, we gain a panoramic view of the complexities that shape our world, allowing us to approach problems from multiple angles. Through this invocation of inclusivity, let us foster an environment where each voice, each story, and each perspective finds its place in the tapestry of our conversations. Amen.
Thank you very much. Tony, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaw?
Here.
Gulick?
Here.
Neese?
Present.
Owen?
Here.
Joy?
Present.
Kennedy?
Here.
Tidswell?
Here.
Aspenlighter?
Here.
Boyette?
Here.
Rupsis? Here. Mayor Cole?
Here. Just as a reminder for anyone, there's copies of our agenda on that cart back there. And there was a change in our agenda the middle of last week. Item 1F from the consent agenda has been moved to item 5A. Both 5A and 5B involve the Mitchell Court project. And 5A, or the new 5A, is the home program funding, and then 5B is the TIF application. So everybody should be aware of that. With that, Council, we have two sets of minutes for approval, May 28 and June 10. Is there discussion, changes, or a motion relating to one or both sets of minutes? Councilmember Boyette, and then Councilmember Joy.
Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes for May 28th, 2024, and also June 10th of 2024.
Okay. Motion made by Councilmember Boyette and Councilmember Joy with the second for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion for approval of both sets of minutes, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Council courtesies this evening. Councilmember Boyette, I believe you had one.
Oh, yes, I did. After looking over the notes for 2 weeks ago, I'm going to bring a motion to reconsider item number F, which was the resolution approving municipal court judges' salary increase. And we'll be doing this at the end of the number 5B.
We'll just deal with that at the end of the meeting. That was the decision not the budget decision, but the resolution that would have been required to increase judges' salary, and that failed at our last council meeting. Okay. Other council courtesies this evening? Are there any other council courtesies? Okay, we do have a proclamation this evening in recognition of Drug Abuse and Violence Prevention Week, and the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas we take a stand against drug abuse and violence, which, as we do, contributes to the well-being and quality of life for all citizens of Billings, Montana. And whereas all young and old citizens are called to promote the health and well-being of our community. And whereas on the 25th annual March Against Drugs and Violence, a community effort is taking place to provide information and awareness to our citizens on painkillers, opioids, and their abuse and prevention and education. And whereas we thank and acknowledge our community, civic, and law enforcement leadership, both locally, statewide, and nationally, for their hard work in this area. And whereas we call upon all citizens to proudly join in this annual event to take place at the courthouse lawn at 11:30 a.m. on July 13, 2024. Now, therefore, Mayor William Cole, do hereby proclaim July 8 through 13, 2024 as Drug Abuse and Violence Prevention Week throughout Billings and encourage all citizens to proudly and publicly take a stand against drug abuse and violence. And thank you to former council member Mike Yakowicz, who began that event and has shepherded it faithfully ever since. We have no other proclamations. Council reports this evening. Councilmember Boyette.
Just for information, the Miss Teen Montana pageant will be this Friday and Saturday at Petro Hall at MSUB. And I was the only one of the council who put their name up, so I'm the judge. Gee, thanks, everybody.
We'll let you keep the honorarium, which you do out of the goodness of your heart. Thank you for serving in that way. That should be very interesting. Any other council reports this evening? Okay, city administrator reports. Chris, do you have anything for us this evening?
Yeah, Mayor, I do have a few things. You mentioned the first one, that was the change in the agenda midweek on the Mitchell Court issue. And so you're aware the plan is we'll present it, planning staff and developer, then go into two separate actions are needed. One for the first component tied to community development, and then the second one's the TIF application. So we'll present the project as one, answer your broad questions, and then go into those two issues specifically. Second item is just we've got a couple of staff here tonight, Heather McMillan and Julie Stetlier. They'll be presenting item 2 on the agenda from Homefront, the Homefront project. So that listed me as the presenter, so that will, thank you. There, also, third item, we've been having some challenges with utility billing. We've gone through a software change. Those always go real smoothly, don't they? But there's some issues with both the utility software and or our mailing, the company that we use for handling the mailing vendor. And we're working through those challenges, so just ask our customers for patience. We are posting on social media and on our website as we work through that. There was some hope that possibly by the end of the day today they would have it figured out, but we're working diligently to get those issues resolved. Next up, very serious note. So Chief St. John, I got to see he and Cheryl this afternoon. The chief did suffer a heart attack yesterday. The good news is they got him, he was able to get himself to the hospital real quick. They got him transported back here to Billings. He was just outside of Red Lodge. He's doing fine. He's on medication as they make a plan tomorrow as to his surgery is a little bit more complicated than originally hoped. So tomorrow they'll devise a strategy as to what approach they're going to take. And once we know that information, I'll share that with you. But his family really appreciates your prayers for them and for the doctors as they figure out what's the best way to move forward. In the meantime, the department is in great hands. We've got a very robust hierarchy of who's in charge and who's in control. Any emails or questions you have, please send them to Kevin and I. We can immediately get them to the right person and keep things moving forward. So that is the most critical thing I had. No ex parte communication came in late this afternoon. That's it, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. And our best wishes and prayers are with the Chief's family. Was there something else, Chris, that you had? No. Okay. Then we'll move on to public comment on non-public hearing items. So tonight, that's anything under item 1, which is a consent agenda. Item 4, which is the Sabura TIF application for Billings Hotel and Convention Center. And then items 5A and 5B, which is the Mitchell Court Home Award, Dollars Award, and TIF application. So 1, 4, 5A, and 5B. If you'd like to comment on any of those items, please come forward. The other items will have a public hearing on later in the meeting. So please come forward. Just ask that you tell us your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Hand up. Has to do with item 4, the convention center TIF application. What you're getting there is, this is information in the packet. This isn't something else this is in your packet. So I would oppose it. And there's several reasons why. Before you have your TIF policy, it says land acquisition assemblies. Well, we're not doing any of that. You're not demolishing anything. You're not removing a structure. I mean, this is private property in addition to an existing business, private enterprise at work. There's already a loan, I would imagine they got a sign out there financed by somebody. I think the street was just done out in front, so there's no public infrastructure necessary. Your private infrastructure doesn't include any of the items that they're asking for. I think one of the things this council has always talked about is number 2, financial assistance, and it says all financial assistance must be approved by council prior to activity receiving funding. Well, they've already started the project. The shell is already up. It says financing assistance should be requested prior to beginning construction. I mean, they had every opportunity to come down here long before now and say, hey, these are the hurdles we can't get over. Can you help us out? Not a word. I guess one of the other things is right down at the bottom, and if you turn to the second page, this is in your TIP policy. It talks about a conflict of interest for board members when property may directly benefit from a TIF expenditure and board support staff. Well, you flip the next page over and you go to the meeting minutes. I've highlighted number 5, Billings Hotel Convention Center application. And then I highlighted voting was unanimously approved. He voted for his own project. Didn't even recuse himself. I mean, that's in violation of your TIF policy, your conflict of interest. And so I think this thing has been poisoned. I don't think you can fix it. They want us to pay for asphalt. He's the one that dug the asphalt up. Why should the taxpayers have to pay for the asphalt? Why should we have to pay for storm sewers? I mean, you're going to find this in your packet. Why should we pay for site development? What do they call it? Site demo and site work. Why? Why does the taxpayer got to pay for this stuff? I mean, he's the one that made the decision to move forward with a project that apparently has some financial benefit. I mean, he isn't doing it out of the goodness of his heart. He's going to make money at this. I mean, landscape. Why are we paying for landscape? I mean, this isn't a TIF project, or this isn't a project looking for in the need of TIF funding. This is a project that just, hey, there's TIF funding, and I'm on the board, and I can vote for my $500,000 for myself. I mean, this is a pretty damn good deal. And that's exactly, it looks like what happened according to the meeting minutes. He just votes himself a $500,000 little TIF expenditure. So I'd vote no. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Further public comment on items 1, 4, 5A, and 5B. Is there any other public comment on those items? No one is coming forward. No one is jumping up out of their seat. So we'll close the public comment period, I guess. Thank you very much. Just to staff, when those items come up on item 4, I assume that staff will have information.
Yes, in our presentation, we're going to clarify that those minutes referencing unanimous, Mr. Murray did not vote. He had recused himself, and so that should have been clarified. We'll get to that in the presentation.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item up is our consent agenda. Are there separations from our consent agenda for a separate vote? Councilmember Brassenleiter?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to separate agenda item H2 for purpose of recusal.
Thank you. Bills of the week, June 11th. Performance engineering is a payee. Further separations? Are there any other further separations? Okay, for the rest of the agenda, is there a motion? Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I move to approve the items of the consent agenda except for item H2.
Second by Councilmember Tidswell. Discussion or questions? Councilmember Boyette.
I always want to highlight donations. In this case, for our anti-graffiti, we had 2 nations, one from a Susan Lovely and one from a Diana Scott Mortledge. I think it's important to show their names.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder for anybody who's also interested in contributing to the Anti-Graffiti Fund, which provides a source of funding for rewards for people who identify that leads to the arrest of somebody for or violation of our, and I assume conviction of our anti-graffiti ordinance. Please contact the city, our code enforcement officer, our department, or Tina Hoger, their director. Other discussion, Councilmember Aspenlighter, Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Rupsis.
I just wanted to thank Aaron, Taya, and Katie for all the work on the MOU with the YWCA for the Northern Lights Family Justice Center. This is a huge step for our city. Thank you for all the work that you put into this. This is a long time coming and a great day for the city as we move this thing further to reality in our city. So thank you for all of the effort and the work.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese.
Mayor, I also wanted to have a question about D as well, actually C and E, a couple of them. So just first of all on the D, I agree with what Councilmember Aspenlighter indicated, but I do have a question about the agreement. Do you know, or Kevin, or whoever put this together, do you know, I mean, we're granting $200,000 a year. Is there any limitation on how they can spend these funds? As I read through the MOU, it looks like they're being utilized for different expenses, but is there anything preventing that from all being put on salary? Are we doing anything to kind of ensure that these funds are used for what is need to be done within that service?
Mayor and Councilmember Neese. I think the short answer to that is no. I mean, in the agreement, it spells out our contribution to the group. The memo, though, clarified how they plan on using our funds. So does it say in that agreement that they cannot be used in certain areas? It doesn't. The relationship and implementing of the strategic plan for the Family Justice Center is what we've been working with hand in glove between ourselves, the YWCA, and we're hopeful that the county's also going to soon become a participant financially. But specific to your question, there's not a restriction outside of being in compliance with the agreement that you have in front of you.
Okay, and I think, you know, going again, I'm not going to oppose this. I think we need to move forward with it, but I just think if this is going the next time before we do the next phase of this, we would look at making sure that they are doing what they're saying they were going to do, and we make sure things are followed. And so if we have to put in place some guidelines, different grants for different amounts for different functions, I would recommend we look at that if we needed to. But I just, the other, and that's the only question I had on that one, but thank you, Chris.
So if I could just add, I'm sorry, just real quick, Councilmember Neese, the agreement does have them coming to the council, I think a minimum twice a year, reporting back to us on progress. So
Great.
There's a couple specific called out opportunities in our relationship to have that conversation between the Northern Lights Family Justice Center and the City Council.
Okay, great. I look forward to those updates. And Mayor, I had a question for the city attorney regarding C, the Community 7 contract. Do you know if for some reason this contract were to terminate, does this contract require them to maintain our records for any length of period of time as required by the state? Or if this contract were to terminate for some reason, or if we didn't renew it this time, I know this is a 5-year contract, but if we were to terminate this, would we have to suddenly take possession of all these recordings that we do and then somehow host them somewhere?
The Councilmember Neese, the recordings themselves are not, so I'm trying to open this up and find maybe what you're referring to, but my recollection is that the recordings are only required to be maintained for a year. And the contract does not require them to be maintained longer. Those are not city records. Those are not part of the city records. They're just simply linked to the city website. Our minutes are the official record
So
of the meetings.
Our city website's hosting the videos and the audio and video like the state requires then? Or does the state not require this city council to have it recorded?
The state requirement is that they be recorded. I don't have that statute in front of me, so I will look it up here while the meeting is continued, but the statute, I believe, does require recording. I'm not sure what the retention requirements are off the top of my head, but
Okay,
I'll
I
certainly
would-
look into that and
I
get
would
back with
urge
you.
us to look into that, so when this comes up for renewal, that we don't find ourselves having to suddenly struggle for that. And then I did have a question, Mayor, if you don't mind, for item E.
Item 1B,
E is in Edward.
as in Edward, okay?
And I'm not sure who to address this to, so I'll address it to you, Chris. This is the memorandum of understanding with the Billings Public Schools for the school resource program. This year is covering 59% of the cost for those services. I'm sure the officers are used throughout the city at different times. Do you know what the percentage of coverage was last year?
I do not. I don't know. Kevin could be.
So, Councilmember Neese, I'm not sure I understand the question. The amount of coverage, is that what I heard, or?
Yeah, I believe the memo stated that 59% of the cost is covered by these memorandums of understanding. So is that the same as last year? Are we sticking to that 59%, or are we slowly assuming more and more of the cost for the school resource officers?
It's generally the same as last year, and with the history of this program, it goes back to at one point, we were doing a 50-50 share with the school district, and then the latest officers that were added, or the most recent officers were added, we did do 100%, so that's why you're coming up with that 59%, but it's the same as last year.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilmember Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, my only question was related to the archival retention for 1C as well. If those are not official city records, I think there's great value to the city, and we should consider, right now, the Community 7, you can go back 2 years and see. So they're doing more than what the contract says, but I think after 2 years, maybe we need to consider taking possession of them or making a copy of them or something. I think those are important archival documents for the city, and we should be retaining them as long as we can. So I would encourage us to work with Community 7 to figure out some type of transfer strategy if their intention is not to retain them in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could just ask a question back on the Family Justice Center, the topic was mentioned briefly, and that's how our $200,000 compares to the budget as a whole. And I don't know whether Aaron or Katie or both want to address this, but in particular, where are the other funding sources going to come from? The YW has been great about providing staffing, also the physical hosting. But in particular, how's it looking for a county contribution? We want this to be a community facility, not just a city facility. And I have some concern that that could happen. So if they could address that, and also maybe the way of private donations, but what's the bigger budget look like compared to the city's contribution? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Mayor and council, I do have the proposed budget for FY25. We are, and I apologize, I'm just pulling it up now. They responded to that question earlier today. For this fiscal year 2025, total estimate is right around $235,000. So in cash, we're certainly the largest contributor. There's a $25,000 grant, and then there's some donations as well. And then on the YW side, there's certainly a number of in-kind components. For instance, the building. They're providing the space in which we're operating the Family Justice Center, at least the launch out of. So in full numbers for estimated FY25, total budget about 235. Obviously, we're about 200 of that is the contribution we're making, with some donations and grants covering the rest, plus the in-kind services of facilities and staff Remember, many of the staff who are supplying services are staff that exist at the city, the county, and the YW, and maybe some others. So that's year one. There's some projections out, I believe, up to 3 years.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you, Chris. I wonder if I can still ask Katie or Aaron to address what's the plan, the goal, long-term?
Yes, I'd be happy, excuse me, to address that, Mayor. So when we built this budget, we took the idea that we believed that $200,000 would be available here and what we would do with that. And then there's already some other foundation grants that we've started to ask for that are coming in successful for the project. But the $235,000 budget really was, here's what I think we have to spend and here's how we would spend it. But there are some other grants that we've got out there. We've got a grant that would total $500,000 over a 3-year period to the federal government. We won't know until September whether or not that was successful, but we're certainly researching that. We also, hopefully the county will buy in, and I think the plan is that as we get more funds available, then we prioritize how those are spent and how the project grows. This first phase is going to allow us to add a services navigator who will help to assess the needs and will really find out where the gaps are. So what services are available that people can get? What are people asking for that we cannot meet? And then when more funding becomes available, we say, gosh, everybody that comes in asks to see a therapist and we don't have a therapist on staff. I think we really need to hire a therapist going next. Or maybe it's that nobody asks for a therapist, but everybody needs civil legal services. So we would prioritize civil legal services. It's a work in progress and will grow as funding becomes available. But I guess for context, the $200,000 contribution from the city, all of the expenses are rolled up into the YWCA Billings budget, and our budget is $2.2 million a year. So certainly the $200,000 is not funding the entire project. And I see Northern Lights as a new project and a separate entity, but it's also integral to what's happening at YWCA and the services that are available. So it really is a much larger project, but I wanted to break that budget down specifically with what those very identified new Family Justice Center expenses would be.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And again, thank you for your service and the YWs in this effort. So,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for your support.
Other discussion on the motion, which is for approval of the non-separated items. Okay, we'll proceed to a vote then. The motion again is for approval. All the items on the consent agenda with the exception of 1H2. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 1H2, Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve item 1H2 as stated.
Is there a second? Councilmember Gulick. Any discussion? Okay, if in favor of the motion, approval of item 1H2, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item 1. I thank you, with the exception of Councilmember Asperleiter, who did not vote on the last motion. That brings us to our regular agenda. First item up, number 2. Tony, would you read item number 2?
Item number 2, public hearing regarding low-income rental housing, Lucy's Lofts. No council action required.
Very good. This is a presentation. Come on forward, Patty and company. And just as you know from your staff report, again, this is not a decision item, but it is a required public hearing, so the public can have an opportunity to weigh in on this project and on, so that's what we're doing this evening. We'll call up a PowerPoint, maybe. Please. And give us a minute while we do that on Lucy's Lofts, which I assume is named in appreciation for Lucy Brown.
point to you? Okay. 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 Sure, yeah.
Just say click and it'll, Patty.
Mayor and Council, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk to you about this project. My name is Patty Webster. I'm the CEO of Homefront. And today we just want to kind of give you a first, second, third, fourth glance at this PODS project, if you will. The new name, Lucy's Lofts, is indeed, Mayor, a reference to a housing a housing legend in our community, Lucy Brown. She doesn't know about this yet, so I hope she's not watching. But we do want to name a project after her. And since Lucy is the one who had the foresight to buy this subdivision back in the early 90s, it was one of the only pieces of land still available back then that was zoned multifamily. And now this will be the final project that we work on there with this. And so that's who we are, Homefront. She's moving next.
There you go.
Our vision, values, and mission, about 5 years ago, we're in our 5th year now, we rebranded. And it's just that we are inspiring individuals and families by promoting partnerships and creating innovative and sustainable housing. This project certainly fits within that mission, and it certainly fits within the mission of the needs of our community. Heather from Homework.
Yes, thank you. I know some of you, but it's been a while since I've been in front of City Council, but my name is Heather McMillan, and I am the Project Development Director for Homeward. We are based in Missoula, but we work statewide on housing issues, and we own a couple properties here in Billings, the Acme downtown. We preserved Fraser and Sage, and also Southern Lights down in the Southside neighborhood. Patty was kind enough to kidnap me off of a bus when we were doing the housing tour and said, hey, I want you to be our developer. So we're partnering. We are acting as Homefront's developer, and they're going to own and operate the project. So a little bit about Homeward. We have, go ahead and advance. Great. We are our own 501c3. We're a nonprofit. We're a HUD-designated community housing development agency. We also provide first-time homebuyer education, financial education, and post-purchase classes in our Missoula community. But we do work statewide, partnering mostly with entities like Homefront, Whitefish Housing Authority, Missoula Housing Authority. We just finished a large project. We just feel like using our strengths and our skills to complement each other and doing projects together are really important, and this is a prime example. Go ahead. PODS, the pre-manufactured overhauled dwelling solution, sounded a little cumbersome, and that's what we presented to Montana Housing in April, I think. But we are pleased to announce, and don't tell Lucy even though this is public, it's either going to be Lucy's Lofts or LB Lofts because she really did have that foresight. But what we did present to Montana Housing was that we're going to take, and they're stored up there, and this is a perfect opportunity to explain what's going on. Homefront went out and they bought these units, and I'm going to call them units because they're a little square box, rectangular box that has a bathroom and a bedroom. And they're going to recycle those 202 units into 101 homes. The financing structure that we're proposing to Montana Housing is using 9% housing credits. We're pairing them with 4% credits, and that's how we can get to the scale that we're talking about for this project. Go ahead and advance. You get to talk about it.
So up in this subdivision already, we have several other successful housing that we have done using a variety of funding. So our first project was Whitetail Run. That's a tax credit project that was funded through ARA funds, 32 units of 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. Then we did Pheasant Home, which was in partnership with Homeward. And those are state home and city homes, so you all supported that with city home funds and working with, I'll talk a little bit more about that. That is 16 units of 2 and 3 bedroom units. Then we built Falcon Run. We saw a need in our community for larger size, fully accessible units. So we used all non-federal funds and built a duplex, a 4 bedroom, fully accessible. along with a garage and a community room out there. Then we built Red Fox, which is 30 units of 1 and 2 bedroom units, which was a fully 100% tax credit project. 8 of those units have home funds. 8, yeah. And now we're looking at putting 101 units on our final piece of property up here, which will have a capital stack. That's very confusing, so I'll let Heather speak more to that.
So go ahead and advance. Thank you. So this whole thing started, Homefront had this idea, so High Plains jumped in a car and headed over with Homefront staff, and they went there to North Dakota to assess these homes, units, I should say, because they're not really homes yet, but they're going to be. So the really good thing was that they got to see the homes, these units, the roofs had been taken off, they had been kind of broken apart, but they found that they were really well framed. So there was value in the construction left in that building. And so in the environment that we live in with high financing costs, low tax credit pricing, materials, labor, land, all the pieces, this was a real win that they bought these 202 homes and brought them back to Billings, and we could find value to help save and write down the cost. So our cost per unit is a little lower than straight new construction. Go ahead and advance. So again, High Plains went to work and they went to evaluate it, and we had to work on feasibility because when you have to explain to the city permitting office that you're gonna recycle some little rectangular boxes from North Dakota and put it into a new construction project, you have to make it work. The cool part about this, and it's just, they're stored there right now, but what's gonna happen is the grayed area on that graphic is those are the units, that's the bedroom and the bath. They're gonna connect to a central core of kitchen, circulation, living, new construction. And so doing 5-plexes and 6-plexes are pretty easy from an architectural standpoint and a permitting standpoint, but they really sat down, went through the how complex it was to connect those 4 units on each floor of the buildings. And so the city has bought in, we got great feedback there, and really from a feasibility standpoint, we're pretty excited. Go ahead and advance. And so again, we're creating 5 and 6-plexes. Right now, there's currently, we have 7 5-plexes. I'm going to slowly say that. 7 5-plexes and 8 6-plexes. Each of those buildings will have an accessible unit, and there's 3 that will have veteran-targeted homes with project-based VASH vouchers. We're going to do more than that, but as a bare minimum, we're going to do that higher level of accessibility and veteran targeting because we know there's a high need and a large wait list. Go ahead and advance. So Sanderson Stewart and High Plains worked really closely with the city again and engineering, trying to make sure that last parcel, because heaven forbid we have a rectangular site with infrastructure right next to it. The last parcel, we had to get creative with, that access road, making sure the fire department could make their turns, that we could plow snow, we could do all those pieces. But honestly, they came up with a really efficient plan, layout, and so we know all of those, and we have estimates for those costs, and we were really comfortable when we presented to Montana Housing that this could be a really successful project. Go ahead and advance. So why is this important in Billings? I mean, it's not hard to tell any community in Montana, let alone the largest community in Montana, that housing is an issue. And unfortunately, we can make the case that this is a vital resource. You guys have a wait list sitting in Billings right now, over 7,000 people on a wait list to find a home. And we were worried that just 2-bedroom apartments were going to be an issue, but not really worried because there's now over 800 people on a wait list for 2 bedrooms. This was also compounded, and I don't know if you are all aware of this. When we do a tax credit project, we put a deed restriction on the property, and it used to be for 30 years, and then it was 45, and now we do it for 50 years. Well, Shiloh Glen was one of the early ones for 30 years. City invested, tax credits were invested, and that actually sold and went to market. It lost its affordability. Somebody else bought it because they knew they could double the rents and make money on them. So not only was the wait list long, but also 120 homes were lost at Shiloh Glen that went to market. Go ahead and advance. So really, it's the outcomes. I mean, Lucy and I are really excited to be talking about this project today. Oh, sorry. That's a habit. Lucy and Patty and I spend a lot of quality time together, but for Lucy's Lofts, I'm really excited about kind of the outcomes, because this is a really good example of partnership and us working together for our strengths. We understand development and getting projects coming to fruition. They can own and operate and manage it successfully. I don't know if there's anything you would like to add. Great. Yeah, and so we're just here for questions and wanted to just make sure that we ran this past you and let you know, and hopefully identified housing as a critical need in the Billings community. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Welcome to Billings. We hope your experience here continues to be a good one. Billings is open for business, especially for people who want to build housing. Do we have questions for Patty or Heather before we go to a public hearing? Councilmember Owen.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, both of you, for being here. Pleasure to see you again. Patty, I have a couple questions for you. I've really been impressed with the amount of outreach that Homefront has been doing in the Heights neighborhood to make sure that everybody understands these projects. You have gone to every public meeting you've been asked to. You have told people to call you directly if they have questions or concerns. But for the record, let's knock down a couple of the big myths that are circulating around this project. So, first one, that this is a dumping ground for illegal immigrants being rehomed in this community.
False.
And tell me why.
Because that's not who we're wanting to serve. We're wanting to serve families. I'm going to go back to the myth, my number one myth breaker with all of you. Some of you have heard this before, but out of the 2018 families we serve every day, how many do you think receive public assistance, meaning welfare? 50%, raise your hand. 80%. Okay, nobody wants to play. It's 2%. 2% of the families that we serve receive welfare assistance. So we're serving the working poor in our community, and other housing developers here, I think, I see them nodding in the audience, but that's really who we're serving. And so these are people that, they're working poor people just trying to make ends meet. I think the latest housing wage, I just sent it to Heather the other day, and now I'm going to get it wrong. It was very interesting, though, that 590-101 and 59105 zip codes were like $3 an hour difference on what a family needed to make to afford a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, and that's from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Yes. So I thought that was interesting. I'd be happy to send information over. Can't imagine what it would be in 59106, right? So really, that's the answer to that.
Which is a great lead into the next question, which is, isn't this just a homeless shelter?
No.
So talk about that a little.
It is not. So, yeah. So this is not a homeless shelter in any way, shape, or form. Families are going to have to meet normal rental criteria, right? Some preferences will be given. So like the VASH vouchers that we have for the homeless veterans, they have a minimum of a criteria that needs to be met. Honestly, all they need to not be is a sex offender, and they need to meet the HUD income limits. Other than that, we're not allowed to check anything else, okay, to issue them that voucher. For our normal tenants, we're doing background checks, we're doing rental references, we're doing criminal checks, we're doing all the things.
And people pay rent, right?
Because people pay rent, that's right.
Okay, and then the last one, I just want to hear you talk about a little bit about your crime prevention strategies, because that's the one that I think is the most frustrating to me, is that because it's low income, it's inherently higher crime. And I think often the residents of these properties are victimized as much as they are victimizers. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing for crime prevention in this area?
Sure. The first thing is we act on any rumors that take place. Had one today, it's how I started my Monday today. It was that a small child was being raped out in the parking lot of one of our units. I immediately called the police. Some gal was sharing it on social media. And Officer Hillier with the Billings Police Department was amazing. He was able to go up and interview people. He called me back before I even left for our other meeting. Patty, it's debunked. Don't worry about it. We're also doing it through CPTED, through the Crime Prevention Environmental Design. And there will be everything on site. We're not going to have huge parking lots like a lot of apartment complexes have. I call it pocket parking, but everyone else doesn't really call it that. So if you look, thank you. On the backside, there will be parking. On the street side, there'll be parking. On the sides, there will be parking. There's pull-in parking, there's, what do you call this kind of parking?
Parallel?
Thank you. Parallel parking and just a lot of on-site for everybody. There are balconies in the back, there are front doors in the front, and so lots of windows and light. You'll be able to see who's outside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you answering those because they are rumors that persist in the community. I'm hugely supportive of this project. You guys have done a wonderful job engaging people, being creative in the design. I think part of the reason there's some uproar is that most of the neighbors forget that there is already low-income housing there because
Right.
that's the quality of the work that you do.
That's right.
You have maintained that property beautifully, and I'm really excited to see this go to fruition. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I answer one more thing for you, Councilwoman?
Of course.
So after all of the hoopla came out, right, through everything that was going on, someone just a week and a half ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, sent me an email. And he said, listen, I'm looking at selling our place. I know you're gonna do a project, a good project, but he's being transferred out of state. Could you send me those plans of the project you're gonna do so I can show them to the potential buyers? Absolutely. Zipped it right over to him.
Very good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Nice?
Thank you, Mayor. And just for the record, again, this is up in the Heights, Ward 2. So, Patty, I've been involved with you as you guys have come to the Heights Task Force for many years. And looking at your projects that you build, as I've watched them be developed and looked at the quality and the continued maintenance, when I see your projects, I always see them well-maintained. I don't hear really anything about complaints about those projects whatsoever, whereas I hear about, other landlords who are constantly having issues and complaints. So you guys do a great job. I look forward to seeing this built and serving our community. I did have a couple of questions, though, because often we hear, this is affordable housing or this is workforce housing. And so I'm looking at the memo here, and I just want to double check. So your studio rents, is this your studio rents are going to be $995? Is that what your market then, or is that what the current market is? And let's talk about some numbers as far as what you're.
Yeah, I believe those are the amounts that Shiloh Glen changed to after they came out of affordability. So
Okay.
right there, those aren't ours. Those are from those units.
Okay, so what were people paying? What would people be paying in these new units?
They will be set at, some are at 60% and 50% and a couple at 40%.
So let's change that to dollars. What's the,
It depends on the family size.
just
It
roughly?
depends on so many
And I'm not going to
different
hold you
things.
to any numbers, but just, what are we talking $400 a month? Are we talking $600 a month?
Well, hopefully, they'll be paying no more than 30 to 40% of their monthly adjusted income, which would be more like maybe $300 or $400 a month.
Okay.
The rents will not be set above the payment standards that are set using fair market rents from HUD. So we're down to serve affordable housing, workforce housing.
Okay, and then you talked about vouchers coming in. So tell me about those. So if someone gets a voucher, what is that worth? Is that paying that $600 portion of it and they pay a small portion? Can you explain?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. So with a housing choice voucher, it's a Section 8 program. That's what it was formerly called. People who have a voucher go out into the community, can choose any private landlord, and they'll pay at least up between 30 and 40% of their monthly adjusted income. If their income is zero, they pay zero.
Okay. All right. So,
And and the same thing with the project base. If their income is 900, they'd be paying 300.
okay. And so these people are going to be working to be able to be at these locations. And if you mentioned they all pay rent, which they seem to be paying rent. So what happens if they're stop paying rent?
They're evicted. And if you looked at the city court, unfortunately, we've been very busy over there. I had the same discussion with a few other council people. MIRA, the Montana Emergency Rental Assistance Program, did not do our community any favors. And the damage that was done to units, so let's say, for example, Family A, MIRA paid their rent for 18 months. Family never had to contribute anything on their part, and they trashed the unit, leaving over $7,000 for the damage above and beyond the security deposit. So, I mean, there's that problem, and we will evict families. we're there to help train families how to be good renters, but we're also running a business. It's community housing, but it's, yeah.
Right. So then you take the rents from others that are, you've basically the profit of the organization to then have to invest back into that property to get it back up and then
Yeah,
rent it again.
every year we have, every month we have collection write-offs that go before the board. And I was questioned about that a little bit, and they have people's names on them, so we don't make that part of the public record, but I could definitely redact those and give you guys information on those amounts that are having to be charged off every single month.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. I think you guys do a great job. I'm looking forward to this project being developed out there.
Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Rasmussen-Leiter?
And no question, just a comment. I mean, you're targeting some veterans. We're coming off our nation's birthday, and Montana was just listed as one of the most patriotic states in the union. And I hope that you include in some form or fashion a flagpole with an American flag in the courtyard, in one of these courtyards somewhere, as a nod to those veterans that you're going to serve as you build this project out.
Well, thank you for that comment. I just want to say something. The flag isn't just for veterans, it's for any American who celebrates being patriotic and their belief in being in a free country. So I just have to say that as well.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Boyette?
Yes, and either of you can answer the question. Our vouchers here in Yellowstone County are very low. I know Missoula just went through a HUD evaluation, and your vouchers were raised. When are we going to do that here in Yellowstone County to try to get them up, to get people into being able to use the vouchers, the Section 8 funding?
Thank you, Councilman Kennedy, for the question. We actually work every single day on that very issue. The Housing Authority of Billings, actually Homefront, actually served in leadership with Congressman Zinke's office to avoid $567,000 from being taken away from our voucher funds this year. It was a lot of work, but we were successful. Last year, we had $697,000 taken back from HUD, and I put that out in a press release because I wanted the landlords in our community to understand that by them not accepting vouchers, therefore that money is being lost to our community forever. So we staved it off this year. None of the other communities in the state were able to do that, but we were.
Mayor, just to follow up.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up. That's great, you saved the money, but how do you raise the price of the vouchers so the landlords in town will start accepting those vouchers again? Because
Right.
they're not right now.
Right, so part of the work that we just got done doing with Congressman Zinke's office and Senator Tester's office was to have the state legislature and working with Cheryl Cohen with the State Board of Housing and the federal funders with the T-HUD bill actually write language to fund a fair market rent housing study for Montana. Montana's a blip on the map when they do the national studies. And so smaller populations like ours don't benefit very well at all from those FMRs. And then every year, HUD publishes the fair market rents for every community. Believe it or not, HUD considers us a metropolitan area. So we have to go with what those FMRs are.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good, thank you. Other questions, Councilmember Boyette and Councilmember Rupsis?
I went to your presentation the other day at your office, and I noticed that there's no figures at all. We're dollars and cents people here. So you bought some land some time ago, you bought 202 pods, and now you're going to build 18 buildings. Is there a ballpark figure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million? What is it? Kind of a...
Yes, please, it's this.
Well, we can definitely do a training on how tax credits work at some point, but the Twin project allows us to do this project because we need the infusion from the 9% and the 4%, but the total project costs over $25 million. But our per door cost is about $234,000 of total development costs for each of the units. And that's actually it's probably about 40 to 50 $1,000 per unit lower than a lot of the new construction applications that are going into the state right now. So I was just looking at the numbers and just remember that off the top of my head.
Can I interrupt? And that's before we put the pressure on our architects to do the value engineering.
Right.
Which means, okay, you gave us pie in the sky, now let's give us reality, right?
Yeah.
What's it actually gonna cost? Because it's not gonna be that. And that's why I said that at that meeting to the board.
And a little bit of little extracurricular, it's really important to understand that, yes, we're getting housing credits and some federal resources. We're selling those credits to get equity to build this, but that 25 million is invested in Billings and in Montana. It's spent with local contractors, local architects, accountants, and attorneys. And I think that's something that we always talk about, the need and who we're housing, which is absolutely critical. But on the other hand, we're also a huge economic driver, and that money stays in Montana. And in local businesses. So I just thought that was a good point to make.
Thank you. A question for either one of you or both. Broadly speaking, these projects that are Section 8 based, what percentage of operation costs are going to be covered going forward by those Section 8 vouchers? Now, they're below market, but there's no default. And there's virtually no vacancy, so that's good. But help us understand for your typical, private landlord, what that revenue looks like compared to the cost of actually running a facility.
Thank you very much for the question, Mayor. So as Councilwoman Owen stated earlier, we spend a lot of time and money on turning our units and in keeping our properties looking like they do. Can't wait to take you all on another bus tour. Thought COVID was gonna be over, but as we all know, my dad just passed away from that, so not over yet. But we wanna get everybody back on a bus. We wanna get you out to our properties. We want you to visit with the people that are living there. We want you to hear what their experience is of living at one of our properties, because I think you'll be surprised. As far as this project is not Section 8 based. I gotta be clear about that. This is a normal project being built, a tax credit project, workforce housing and lower income housing for sure. We're just going to project base some vouchers at the site. Just helps with the affordability. Yes.
And I'll add, it's definitely the same thing for market rate. We are capped at the rents that we can charge because it's a tax credit project, which is great because then everybody's rent is affordable, but we pay market rate expenses. And something that's really challenging for everybody in the room, I'm assuming, that has anything to do with insurance right now. We have insurance quotes that are coming back 30% higher, 100% higher, especially in eastern Montana. They're blaming you guys for having hail and they're blaming us for having fires, right? Even though these buildings have stood for 100 years in some cases. So we're getting, I would call redlined. And so we have to deal with that. Not just that, but also the cost of labor and maintaining, and we're held at a higher standard because we have private investors that have bought our credits. And so I think that's the same equation. The vouchers that are placed at this project are critical. We can afford a higher mortgage to cover the extra costs associated with construction right now. But also, that's the same equation for a market rate. Somebody who owns a property, their expenses are getting higher and higher too. So really the income limit piece, the rent increases that came in recently actually made this project feasible for us. And I'm assuming that it works better for market rate developers.
Okay, but the question, Heather.
Yeah, what was that?
What percentage of your operation costs get covered by incoming rent, regardless of what the source is, generally speaking, if you can generalize?
100%? I mean, yeah.
Basically, the goal is, it doesn't require any future subsidy if
Right.
you ignore your capital costs.
Right.
Or maybe even includes some capital cost in there, so.
We'll have an operating reserve and replacement reserve, but it doesn't help with day-to-day operations over the next 50 years that we've promised affordability. It all comes from the rents or the voucher assistance on some of the units, and 100%.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? We'll have a public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, Councilor Ripsos, you had your hand up earlier.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just want to commend you on the innovation here. It's good. I'm pleased to see it. And when you say that you're saving $30,000, $40,000 less than fresh construction, you're underselling yourself. Because later tonight, we're going to hear another proposal for a low-income housing tax credit project, and no value statement on that one at all, but it's coming in at $350,000 per unit, right? So there's $100,000. So you guys estimate that we need about 800 new affordable units, 2 bedrooms, right?
7,000 homes.
We've got a waiting list of 7,000, but we don't have 7,000 people on the street. We need 800 new affordable 2-bedroom homes. The other presentation will say it's somewhere around 1,200. Anywhere in that ballpark, 1,000 of these, whether it's $250,000 or $300,000, $350 per unit, that's $200 to $300 million worth of investment that we need in affordable housing in this community. We have to continue to innovate, to do better, to bring these per unit costs down. It's not scalable. And again, 1,000% credit for coming up with what we've got here. We've got to do this times 10 in order to meet this challenge. So thank you for what you are doing, but let's continue to look for new ways to get that cost down even further.
Yeah. I appreciate that. To be fair to the other project, we have scale to spread, and we had land that Lucy bought a long time ago, donated. And so you're comparing apples and pears, so would just be kind.
I'm not really trying to make a value statement of one versus the other. I'm just saying both of these costs are not scalable to reaching to what we need in our community.
New construction is super challenging, and preservation is absolutely critical, and it's a terrible equation right now, so I appreciate the comments.
The one thing I did want to say, and I appreciate your comments as well, Councilman Rupsis, is that the housing that we're doing, the housing that Jean's project is doing, it's housing into perpetuity. It's affordable housing into perpetuity, and that's what's different than the normal market. And so even if it does cost a little bit more for some of the ingenuity and innovation that we're looking to do, we're housers. They're housers. And you've heard my spiel. I think only housers should be doing housing. So, thanks.
Very good. Anything else for our guests this evening before we have a public hearing? Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on item number 2, Lucy's Lost, please come forward. You know the routine. Just name, address, in 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Dan Brooks with the Billings Chamber at 815 South 27th Street. I know that no action is necessary on this item, so I'll keep it real brief. Want to voice our support for this increase in housing supply, and to Councilman Rupes' point, the innovation and creativity here. It's really out of the box, or bear with me, out of the pod thinking here for housing, and we need more of that. So just want to be supportive of this. I also want to mention to the comments of crime prevention and offer a thanks to Patty and her vision and her staff taking time. Last May, we hosted the basic SEPTED program here in Billings. So for 5 days, Patty and members of her staff came and got their SEPTED practitioner certification. So they do have people practicing the principles of SEPTED there at Homefront. We're very grateful for them making that investment. And lastly, I know it's a little bit out of order, but because you don't have any action on this, I wanted to voice our support for agenda item number 5 as well, adding more housing. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comment on item number 2?
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Gene Luer, and I'm on your agenda a little bit later. I'd just like to support Patty and Heather. I've worked with both of them over the years. They do an excellent job. The funding mix, while there are some differences, the funding mix is pretty well similar to the project you'll hear later. And the rents on like a 1-bedroom range from $729 to $936, depending on each unit's restriction. A 2-bedroom on the Mitchell Court project will be $911 to $1,113, and a 3-bedroom will be $1,044 to $1,277. I'm sure there are there is some difference in terms of rents when the two projects, when the dust settles. But I think those ranges are pretty close and significantly below market. So I don't know that that's helpful to you, but I'd encourage your support for their project. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Any other public comment on item number 2 before we close the public hearing? Okay, no one is coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing. That concludes item number 2. So thank you, council, for your questions and for the public input. We'll move on to item 3. Tony, would you read item 3?
Public hearing and resolution establishing and revising planning and engineering divisions fees. Staff recommends approval.
Very good, thank you. Anna is our presenter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk to you about the proposed fee changes for planning and engineering. These are in front of you as one fee set because they would be paid as one fee set by the developer whenever an application is submitted. Okay. Sorry about that. So in the past, the City Council has asked staff to bring these fees forward as a 2-year consideration. City Council has recommended phasing the fees that way so that we can only have it as a smaller incremental increase over the 2 years instead of one large chunk. The last time that fees were reviewed was in fiscal year 2023. The proposed fees, whenever we did this, was a breakdown of personnel, operations, and maintenance costs for each of the divisions, and the costs are relevant to the fees as we review the applications and permits that are submitted. So, as this slide reiterates, these fees are only intended to cover permit and applications that are submitted by developers. Another thing that I looked at was a consideration of cost for elsewhere in the state, such as Missoula, Kalispell, Great Falls, Bozeman, whenever they're reviewing similar types of applications. So in general, fees were proposed, and I noticed the error on this slide, so I apologize. Fees were proposed to increase by 5% by planning. You'll see in your Exhibit A, which was an attachment to the staff report, the breakdown between the two divisions, so planning and engineering. So a general rule, zoning resubmittal applications were actually reduced in cost as our staff has not taken as much time to do those, so we wanted to be reflective of that. Postage was something that I wanted to reflect as accrued or as assessed by USPS. I don't want us to just eat the cost of that, and it seems to be reassessed multiple times a year, so I just have that changed. Exemptions were increased by 100%. This is actually set by state statutory regulations. This is actually not covering staff's time associated with processing these applications. Short-term rentals are also increased by 100% to $300. This is about reflective of our time. I would say it's a little less than how much time it takes us to process this application, but I actually wanted to stay relevant to what the market is and what we're seeing so that we can still be reflective and try to encourage that kind of tourism in the area, but it's close enough to cover our time associated with that. Engineering fees were adjusted according to the cost of services, and engineering fees are still below their service cost level. So this is the statewide comparison that I was referring to earlier. Just to note, a lot of different jurisdictions have a base fee rate and then have a per lot assessment. So I wanted to try to keep it as relevant as I could. When you look at Missoula and Bozeman and Great Falls, all three of them have that per lot. So the number in parentheses is reflective of how much it would be for that type of lot number application. The zone, so it's just a little bit different between each of the ones. Great Falls does not have short-term rentals, but I actually did receive a call from their planning department asking us about our process associated with that and saying that they were highly considering doing a short-term rental fee in the future. We'll see if they do that. Also, these are fees from 2024. These divisions or different municipalities have not assessed fees for 2025 at this point. Please refer to your Exhibit A in the staff report, as I realize this is not legible on the screen, but I did want to have it on the screen. This is what we're considering. It's got the breakdown from what last year combined fee was, what planning is proposing as their increase, what engineering is proposing at their increase, and then the highlighted rows were what the total roll-up was of the fiscal year 2025 and 2026. And that's the engineering site plan. Those are fees that were just relative to engineering. That's all that I have for you. These fees increases are just intended to cover our cost of services. So.
Very good. Questions for Anna or engineering before we go to public hearing? Councilmember Neese and Councilmember White.
Thank you, Mayor. Anna, you said during your presentation that the engineering fees were still at the below cost level. Is there a plan to get that at or above our cost?
I promised I wouldn't speak on Debbie's behalf.
Okay.
No, you can.
So yes, we're anywhere between 20 and 30% still low compared to what our cost of services is. We just thought that was too much to come and ask for 30% both years. So when we do it next time, we should be able to get to where we're actually recouping the cost.
Okay, so there's a plan to get at cost?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Another 20 to 30%.
I'm sorry, Mayor, do you, quick follow-up on that? Do you know why it's gotten so out of line?
You know, we talked about that today. I think through the years, maybe in an effort not to raise them too much, we just kind of kept up with what we thought was, I don't think we spent enough time looking at what they were to really do a cost of services for them, is what happened.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Councilor Owen, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So I just want to be clear that what we're looking at here tonight primarily applies to new construction and new development.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Are there proposals coming for, building divisions, for renovations? Because I think, go ahead, you can answer that first, and then I'll ask my second question.
Yes, so they would be new constructions, fences. Short-term rentals is actually like a renewal fee on an annual basis. So anytime that you have a short-term rental, we've actually recently acquired a software to try to help us track that and make sure that we're gaining all of the revenue associated with those, so they're at least permitted and we can make sure that they're listed accordingly through business licensing, but yes.
So the reason I ask is because I have this sort of ongoing concern with our department in general, that we're not very customer service oriented. And if we're not even covering costs, I can understand why. But at some point, I think we have to wrestle with this. I continue to hear from people, particularly small businesses, who are trying to rehab a new building or expand their business, and they're just running into problems. They will submit plans, and the response back from the city is, well, this doesn't comply. But we don't tell them how, and we don't tell them why, and we don't tell them how to fix it. And I understand that our mindset is that we are a regulatory entity and we're not here to give free advice. I get that. But for small businesses, some of this ongoing in and out, the carrying costs, the permit time, it's really burdensome. And I'd like to know that as we're looking at chronically raising fees, that we're also thinking about the service that we're giving and how we can be more collaborative. I mean, big developers have a certain amount of resources, but certainly length of time to get permitted matters to them just as much as a small business. But small businesses don't always have the resource to try to figure this out and try to navigate our bureaucracy. So help me understand our ongoing plan as we try to do more cost recovery to, in parallel, become more customer service, pro-growth oriented.
Hopefully I'll speak to this correctly. I think it's kind of a twofold question here. So I can't speak on behalf of how building permits are commented back to different submitters. I can speak on how my staff responds back to subdivisions. And I do know what we are doing is we're trying to send red line versions of items that we would like to see corrected and trying to make that easier for different submitters. I have not been familiar with this whole process on the other side. I can tell you when I was a consultant, it was very helpful to get those red lines, and that's something that staff has implemented maybe within the last year or so. I will be paying more attention to see how we can implement and try to be a better resource for the community so it can go smoother for everyone.
I sure appreciate that, and I recognize that we're talking about subdivisions here. I want to express every chance I get this idea that we should be oriented towards solving problems and not just heavy-handed compliance, particularly as we're looking at what are fairly significant fee increases. So, thank you.
I've got a question for Anna or Debbie, or both of you. We got a well-reasoned email from Dan Brooks across the aisle this afternoon reminding us and the members of the Billings Chamber of Commerce that we have an infill policy that talks about incentivizing development in infill areas. And we really, with the exception of our TIF program in those three areas, we don't have any sort of incentive program. My response to that, I guess, is we still have to cover our costs. And so there's no free lunch, and therefore one obvious way to generate the ability to waive fees in preferred infill areas would be to increase those fees across other areas. And my prediction is the city is okay with that as long as the net amount that comes in is the same. I don't want them to get the false expectation that that could be done if the departments would object to that. But in principle, would that be, from a financial perspective at least, a possible direction to go if the market wanted to go there in order to generate funds for incentivizing areas in high priority or incentivizing development in high priority areas?
I think that's certainly an idea to explore. One thing that will be a little bit tough in a situation like that is you may not always have a stagnant or permanent amount of subdivisions that come in every year. So let's say that you did hypothetically increase the subdivision fee and that was intended to offset master site plan, which is something that would be a development just on the lot without a subdivision review. You may not have enough subdivisions to offset that amount. And one of my responses to Dan, but I didn't want to be too cumbersome on Tony because I wanted to include that comment. One of my responses to Dan is, yeah, I certainly agree. We do need to take a look at that infill policy and investigate how we can get there. But our priority right now as a planning department is getting in compliance with that Senate Bill 382 and trying to get the growth policy for the different areas like the Inner Belt Loop and the West End and the Heights and the master growth policy plans in place. I don't want to dismiss that, and so I have it on my list as something I'd like to circle back to. My concern would just be, will we have enough of whatever application we increase to offset whatever is being submitted on those infill?
Yeah, so you'd almost have to fund it with last year's extra revenue and cap it because you know what you got last year and then divvy up in the following year would be a way to make sure you didn't break the budget in that way. Councilmember Aspenleiter and Councilmember Ripsis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Vickers, you and I had an email exchange around citizen access, which is the platform that we, when I say we, the development community uses in submitting to the city. And you know, this may be a fair or unfair question to you stepping into this role, but for the 2 years ago, your predecessor, Monica Plecker, and I had been having this conversation as the city was looking at different platforms. I think I would venture to say everybody can agree that citizen access has been troublesome at the least. I would say it's been a garbage system. It's inconsistent in the way that it reports back. It does not alert when comments are done like it's intended to. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You can't enter data in without using cheat codes. Every time we, as an applicant, have to submit, we have to call the office to get some kind of bypass code to get it to even accept the application. So we have this foundational system that hasn't worked since we started, and we keep trying to find these cheat codes and ways to bypass the problems with the system. But I never really get an answer as to where we're at with getting a new system. Can you talk to me about where we're at in looking for a new system?
Sure. I can share what I know, which is limited and probably not as versed as you would hope. I agree, citizen access is frustrating, and I've fielded a couple of calls myself in my time at this role. I also remember my time as a consultant and didn't love the software. We have developed, we are currently uploading information into a different site that's called City View, with the goal of rolling that out to people such as yourself. I believe it was in spring or fall of 2025. I'll double check. I think I had outlined it in one email, but I just don't remember off the top of my head. We've picked one. We've been told it's really great. We're actively trying to get all of the information into it to make it work and be better software for us to use in the future.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
And this is just my comment. I'm gonna be in opposition to this, and I principally for that reason. We keep increasing fees, but we're not increasing service. Our service is, and it's not the people, it's not your staff. Your staff does a good job when we can work with them. I would almost argue that it was better before we even had this online platform, which made it worse for everybody, including your own staff. So we have a system that everybody acknowledges doesn't work well, to say the least. And we keep increasing fees, but we're not increasing service. We're not improving surface, we're not improving efficiencies, but we just keep adding cost. The development community would happily pay even more than what you're proposing if there was some level of consistency and some level of predictability in speed with the system. And until we can get there, I can't support any level of fee increase because we're not getting what we're paying for, is the argument that I would make. So until we get a new system, I can't support any level of fee increase because the platform that we base our core services off of out of your department is hamstringing even your own people to be able to do their job efficiently and effectively. And that impacts the development community that has to pay these fees to use this system. So I will be opposing it for that reason. I think we've been talking about this citizen access program for years, and we're not making, maybe we're finally making some progress, but we're not making progress fast enough to be impactful to the development community itself. So until we get there, I'm going to consistently be a no on any level of fee increase.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to go back to this letter that the mayor referenced from the Chamber and the Home Builders Association. In that letter, they indicated they gave some survey results, and there was more consternation about time frames and delays on inspections and those types of things than there was against fees. You had a nice comparison of our city versus other cities and the fees, but have you done the same thing with time frames? And how do we compare across the state in our ability to turn things around and get things done?
So I can tell you that, for instance, in Missoula, a preliminary plat takes you 1.5 years to go through. And I would say our staff is processing those types of applications faster or on par with the best of the counties and cities in the area or in the state. Building permit reviews and those types of things, I haven't compared that because that would be more in the building division, and that would be something that Jessica could address. But the preliminary plats, yes, I did make some calls, and we're right on par with everyone else, if not faster than every other place that I've called.
Okay, I just think that we should be able to have some type of comparison there. If that's what we're going to compare ourselves to, then I think having a time-based comparison appears to be more important or impactful to our developer community than the fees themselves.
Very good. Councilmember Bernice?
Mayor, I just wanted to make sure I second what you talked about, having some way where we can incentivize these, the areas that we want developed in the town. So I would support moving forward with something like that if the council wanted to do that, or one of the committees wanted to pick that up to try to work with staff to get that done.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Anna? Councilmember Kennedy?
And I understand that you're underfunded and there's other departments underfunded. I think what Councilman Esmelender has said is the time it takes and the customer service type of that I hear complaints about all the time. And it's not just from your department, it's the building department, it's the other areas. And I think that the number one thing, people don't have a problem paying for something and paying for the actual cost. They want to be treated right when they do it, and try to speed the process up because time is money for them. I'm going to vote against this tonight and any other fees that come up for a while until we see a program that's really working with the different departments through the city administrator on some type of customer service and working with the public.
Councilmember Gulick?
Actually, not a question, just more a comment on the building division. We don't have them present, and our projects are almost always with the building division. But so I can, having worked, not in every city across the state, but in a lot of them, in Billings, we get things turned around a lot faster, actually, I find, in the building division than almost anywhere else. And right now, we have one school for the state, and that takes forever. There's a certain guy who just assigned to it, and he enjoys giving suggestions and things that are like not even part of his job. And then there are other places that will send it out to a private entity to review, and they seem to get paid on the number of comments they give. And so I find, and so I'm not dealing necessarily with subdivision or that kind of review, but planning, of course, deals with building projects as well. And yeah, there are times when there's some things get hung up with fire marshal, there's sort of coordination things. But for the most part, it's just been a lot better for us working in Billings than almost any other city, or any other city of any size, actually, in the state. So, and I guess the other point I would make is if we want improvements in service, I mean, if we're not allowing a fee increase so that they can properly staff, I think we're not going to get there. So I think we really need to be approving these fees and continuing to work on what can we do to get better. No one's perfect, and there's always ways to improve, but I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Okay, very good. If nothing else, we'll open it up for our public hearing. Thank you for your presentation, Anna. This is a public hearing on item number 3, establishing planning and engineering division fees. If somebody would like to comment, please come to the podium. Tell us your name, address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of council. For the record, Dan Brooks with the Billings Chamber at 815 South 27th Street. Chris, would you mind helping me out? I know many of you are familiar with and have read through the infill policy, but if not, I just wanted to reference it a little bit tonight. I want to kind of go to that letter that we had submitted in partnership with the HBA and the Billings Association of Realtors, and kind of emphasize one of our main points as being, we just want to think about how we can do more and not just more of the same. It's not that anybody's happy with fee increases, but really we want to just take this opportunity to rethink how we do our development process. And yes, when we're talking about these fees and these increases, these are, not to be dismissive, but small potatoes relative to some things like building permit fees and system development fees, right? That's a big share of that. But we just wanted to take this opportunity to start this conversation. So I wanted to highlight a couple things in our infill development policy, starting on page 3 with that implementation, and you all know this, but I'll just repeat it for the public's benefit. This was adopted in 2011, over a decade ago, and you'll see that not a whole lot has been implemented in this policy. I will point out, however, that under 3A, subparagraph I, that third bullet down, establish a list of potential underutilized parcels. Council's already made some movements on that with a council initiative back in 2022. Thank you to Councilwoman Owen and now gone Councilman Choriki and Councilman Rupsis for putting forth that initiative to map underutilized city public parcels and look at them for potential sale for affordable housing. I think that's the kind of creative and innovative thinking that we need, and much is, here in the infill policy already. So I don't think it's necessarily about rewriting this document, but just simply using it as a guidebook for moving forward on new and better ways to think about our development. Under subparagraph number 2, explore changes to streamline permit review process. Yes, Councilman Aspenleiter is correct. I've heard from a number of our developers that it's not so much this 5 or 30% increase in small-ish planning fees, it's that timeline for review. If they've got a carry-in cost of $7,000 a month, that can get expensive real fast. That's really not a big issue when we're talking about, say, a $500 to $700 increase in an initial fee. So I think that would offer some big changes for incentivizing that infill development. The last thing that I want to point to on the last page here, talking about kind of tracking and ensuring that there's some accountability for this policy. Under the paragraph B, sub items 2 and 3, in conjunction with infill events, city staff will provide an annual summary report, kind of to Councilman Rupes' point of having that good data to look at in order to help you make those decisions. And then following that, number 3, city staff in coordination with infill developers will review the financial benefits of infill projects through before and after tax comparisons and other means. So just want to ensure that we're collecting that data so you have good information to base your decisions on. I will close very quickly with, yes, I had gotten some good feedback in a response, very timely, very thorough from city staff. I'm greatly appreciative of that, outlining many of the things that are on their plate right now. And many of it directed by city council, right? They have limited time, limited resources, and much of that imposed by council putting that on them. But I would offer this policy, having been adopted in 2011, should probably take precedent and priority in the efforts of city council utilizing its staff resources moving forward. And lastly, as we finish our letter, we'd like to offer our support in helping to think more creatively about development, the planning process, fees, et cetera. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other public comment on item number 3? Please come forward.
Good evening, everyone, councilmen and women. My name is Elizabeth Shoemaker with White Lotus Realty. I'm the broker owner and also recently the government affairs officer at the HBA, Home Builders Association of Billings. So I wanted to present this letter, which you've already probably reviewed in your packet, hopefully, and I know that Councilman Rupes did reference that earlier. I just wanted to point out on the second page where it was basically HBA had surveyed their members and 84% of them have found it harder to get their projects going just because of the city regulations. And compared to 2021, it says this, and then below you'll see that as it was pointed out, the city regulatory fees, 25% of members said that was a problem, and then for permitting and inspection timeframes, 40%, that was 40% of the concern there. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and just also say that as a realtor and working with different builders, I hear personally a lot of comments from them saying like, they're retreating to outside of the city, and we don't want to encourage that. We want to encourage these builders to remain in the city and continue their projects here, and whatever we can do to make that happen. I understand there's a checks and balances that has to happen with financing and things like that at the city level, and you have costs that you have to cover. That's always going to be the case. But I think if we could come up with some creative solutions that wouldn't involve further increasing the fees to these, because they get passed on to the home buyer essentially at the end of the day. And we're also concerned about the rising cost of home here in Billings. So that is what I wanted to point out in particular, and also just appreciate that the infill development policy was brought up. That is also something that has been brought to my attention as a concern from the HBA, not feeling like that was really done anything about since it was originated in 2011. I mean, I know there's been a few things, but one of those things on that list on item 3, it's under development incentives. The first one, assess and catalog, the second one, explore changes to streamline permit review process and reduce development fees. And we would just like to ask council to recognize these items and read through them again, and just really put that as a priority in going forward with any changes. And really, you could really make a difference in how much easier it could be for us to actually create these homes that we're lacking. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Please come forward if you do. No one is coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing on item number 3. Back to council for motion or questions or other comments. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution establishing and revising Planning and Engineering Division fees as recommended by staff.
Thank you very much. Motion, second by Councilmember Gulick. Discussion, Councilmember Boyette. Gulick, would you like to speak to your motion? Councilmember Boyette.
Yes, sir. This is about fees. This isn't management. If we're not happy the way the management is running it, we get rid of the management and we train our people. This is only fees to get us back to normal. So if there's a problem with perception, the public isn't happy, whatever, let's go to that route. This has nothing to do with that. This is a simple, get us back to basics where what it costs to have people there. Another topic is how we run the program. Totally different animal.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Gulick. Okay. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with some of the complaints that we've heard about some of the different areas as far as getting these projects developed and I agree with Councilmember Boyette. We need to work on this. I've talked about this before. We need to do something. We as a council can only direct our city administrator, but I think we need to make sure that that the public has heard that this is not working well and something needs to be done internally to make sure this department changes the way it's operating. So I'm hoping that that's being heard by the staff, or by Chris, so that they can take care of this, so the next time this comes up, people will be served much better than they are today. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any further comments? Councilmember Gulick and Councilmember Joy.
Maybe I will say something after all. Again, my comments were mostly related to the building division, because that's what I deal with most, and this is not about the building division. But, I think we would need to hear, it'd be fair if we heard from staff in terms of what they're up against, because there is a lot of things that they need to check through and do, and if they're not properly resourced, then they're just not going to be able to do that. I think it's really easy for a developer or a builder to complain. I mean, we'd all like to have it go faster, right? Is it realistic? Is it fair? Though that's the real question, I think, because if it could be done better, let's figure out ways to make it do better. But in terms of the survey responses, like, would I like the meal I pay at the restaurant to be half the size, half as much? Yes, I would. I think the same thing is true also with fees. So I think how we're doing compared to other communities is important. I think that is a good metric, what's realistic. And so, is there room for improvement? Absolutely is. I think it's good, the comments we've heard, to help figure out ways to improve it. But we also need to temper our concerns with what is realistic. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to, this agenda item has nothing to do with our infill policy, but since there's been some comments, I just was going to just make a few comments. The city of Billings has to recover its fees, and that's the cost of its fees. That's just basic to what you do. If you don't want to recover your cost of fees, then you can expect your customer service to go down, down, down. There's no way that you can continue to have good customer service without covering costs. But I would like to talk a little bit about the infill. I think it would be a very good thing if council were to start to talk about that and come up with a definition, because one of the things that has happened in the past is something has been presented as an infill project, and it actually is a greenfield project. You have to define these things. If we put $1 million a year into investment in infrastructure, $1 million a decade into infrastructure on the west end of Billings, and we say we want development here, the developer says, that's infill. There's already a sewer line. Come on. We got to define these things. Thank you.
Very good. Any other discussion? I just want to reinforce some of the things that have already been said. This is a complicated issue, right? One hand, I was talking with a Bozeman developer who couldn't stop talking about what a joy it is to deal with Billings staff and how quickly it works. But that doesn't mean that we can't do better. Doesn't mean that other communities in our state may be doing better. Certainly doesn't mean there aren't significant problems with the online form. That's been very educational for me. I appreciate that. And definitely progress that has to be made. But all these things are going to be hard to define if we're making progress and where we stand relative to other communities unless they're measured. And so I don't know what those data points are, but how long it takes to get projects through, different types of projects, what the complaints are, how often those complaints are made, how those complaints are dealt with, the variability of project approvals. Are they all over the map? Are they consistent? Those are things that it seems like we ought to be able to measure, and that may help us to improve on some of these and also answer some of these questions. And ideally, those would be the same standards applied to other communities. Yeah, otherwise, we're going to be comparing apples versus oranges. So maybe the Planners Association, Montana Planners Association, could come up with a set of matrix with the help of the development community so that there'd be some standards for comparison and goal setting across the state. We'll see. So any further discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Okay, the motion is for approval of the fees as proposed. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition were Councilmembers Aspenlighter, Kennedy, and Councilmember Owen. Then motion passes 8-3. That concludes item number 3 and brings us to item number 4. Tina, would you please read item number 4?
Item number 4, tax increment financing assistance from the South Billings Boulevard Tax Increment Finance District to Billings Hotel and Convention Center of up to $463,085. South Billings Urban Renewal Association Board recommends approval.
Very good. Our presenter is Andy with Dick and Tina. Sorry, Tony.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Dick Zier. I'm the consultant of the South Billings Urban Renewal Association. I live at 3039 Golden Acres Drive. Tonight, we've asked for $463,085 on behalf of a TIF application from the Billings Hotel and Convention Center. And I know you've had a packet, but I'd like to tell you the reason why I would like to see this approved. This project will create 15 new jobs when completed. It will provide approximately 50 jobs during construction. This request is 10.59% of the total project, 16.67 is allowable. Estimated payback is 10.4 years. This is 16,000 square foot addition to the existing convention center and will increase the capacity of an event, dinner, fundraiser to over 1,200 people for a meal and over 2,000 people for theater seating. This addition, along with the current space, will attract more regional groups and events that otherwise would not consider having their event in Billings. The AV in the addition will be provided by AVI Systems and will include an excellent sound and lighting package with stationary and mobile cameras that will allow for live streaming, Zoom, team meetings, and archive videos of events. This will be a first for Billings that has AV integrated system into the facility. A couple other things I wanted to mention is it was mentioned that Mr. Murai was not, that he voted for this. That's not true. He was gone when I made the presentation. He excused himself from our meeting and went out of the meeting room, and he was not back when we voted on it. Also, Andrew Houlihan on our board, his firm is the architect on this project, and he also abstained from voting on this project. So the remaining 5 members are the ones that voted in unanimous for it. Couple things. Our goal down there is business development and removal of blight. This really doesn't remove any blight, but it does bring in a new business development. It'll be one of the biggest convention centers in 3 or 4 states. And it will attract conventions that we would not get in Billings had this facility not been built. It was also mentioned that the project started before they made application. That is not true. This application was in prior to any kind of a construction. It was in the process of going through the normal procedures that we follow. It also hit at the time when prevailing wage was brought up and said, if they're going to get money from the city, that they have to be paying prevailing wage on that portion of the project. They went back and had the contractor rebid that portion that they're asking assistance for and had them increase the bid to pay the prevailing wage. If this doesn't pass, yes, they will end up eating that increase as well. So I would recommend that we approve this request as presented.
Very good, thank you. Anything to add? Andy?
You want to say something?
Or Jace, Murai, or anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, Dick, we'll see if we got some questions for you. Councilmember Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dick. The TIF policy does reference private infrastructure with public benefits. What's going into these components that is driving a public benefit here that the TIF would come into play?
Kind of what we've done here is approve curb, gutters, sidewalks, paving, things like that. So when the project is done, all these things, we kind of use this as an incentive to make sure the whole thing is done when that they get their certificate of satisfaction and their certificate of completion or occupancy from the city. And so those are things that aren't in the building itself, but all the things that are around there to get this project done so it fits the beautification. The other part of it is, we're trying to create more business with our South Billings Boulevard, South Billings Urban Renewal Association. If you look down there, we've just funded the TPA building. Well, that increased taxes by $300,000 to $400,000 a year. The Torgerson building was 30 or 40,000, if I remember right. This is going to be about $40,000 a year. So those paybacks are coming back real fast for us. If you look down that South Billings urban renewal and see all the businesses that come in there in the last 5 years, and most of it is a direct effect of this TIF district. And so we want more projects down there. Another thing is that, I don't know how many of you are aware or not, but the Trails Head Holiday Inn has sold. And they are not going to have a convention center. They're going to, they tell me, they've made a initial TIF application already. They tell me that they're going to use the convention center that's there for storage sheds, and they're going to tear down the flat part of that hotel. So we're going to lose that convention space, and this will offset that and increase it more. So the business development portion is the real strength of this TIF application.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy.
Dick, thank you for bringing this forward. As we put together many, many years ago, the trade centers at Metro Park, and we've looked at tournaments and everything coming to town. The biggest thing was, where are we going to have conventions? What's large enough? And why does everyone have to go to Bozeman? So this is a great project to go forward on. This is a project exactly what TIFs were established for, so we could help businesses grow, so they bring in more tax dollars. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything further for Dick? Councilmember Braun?
Thank you, Mayor. Dick, how can we help you with these ongoing board issues and transparency issues and concerns? Because candidly, a recusal has to be reflected in your minutes.
Yeah, and I just noticed that. We did the amendment. It has to go to vote, showing that that's going to be part of the minutes, and I sent it out, I think today or maybe yesterday or Friday.
Can we get your board members some training? Can we do a video Zoom with Dan Clark? Is it like, how can we help you resolve these issues with agendas and transparencies and minutes? Because I think you probably want them to go away as much as I do.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's something that I'm real cognizant about, and I'm going to be trying to make it more aware going forward. The first couple ones I was new, and now I'm a little bit more experienced. So I can honestly say I will try to make it more transparent, and we're going to do some things on our webpage. I know it's been brought up about having some of our stuff on the webpage more, and we're going to do that.
That's great. I want you to know there are resources for open meeting compliance rules. If the city needs to help you train your board, let us do that so that we don't have this continued problem. I don't want to see this specter of, doubt over projects that you bring forward.
Yep.
So let us know, because let's put an end to this.
All right, sounds good. I take that under advisement for sure.
Very good. Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. Dick, you mentioned that sidewalks are going to be one of the public benefit.
What's that?
Mentioned sidewalks is one of the public benefits. Do I understand that correctly?
On previous project, we've done that, yeah.
Okay, what about this project?
Well, Jason, they're going to be sidewalks?
Sidewalks going to be along the Maloney Avenue?
Jason, why don't you come up here?
Yeah, so I'm looking at Maloney Lane now. There's no sidewalks there. So are you going to are you putting in sidewalks so people can cross?
There is with the new, thank you, Council, Mayor, Jason Mayor, with the Billings Hotel and Convention Center. With the new Maloney Lane, when they widen the road, they put in some new sidewalks. Unfortunately, we had to kind of tear that up and redo the sidewalk, because there will be a new path going perpendicular to the Maloney Lane sidewalk to the convention center. That's one thing to help beautify our per code for the city code.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. And Dick, another question for you. No, for Dick. Thank you. No, for Dick Zary, yeah. Thank you. So we were handing these minutes from May 20th to 24. They have that, the indication being unanimous approval, and no indication what you said. They left the room. So were these minutes, are these official? Were they adopted by your board?
Not yet.
Okay, so the May minutes haven't been adopted yet.
Yeah,
so
we didn't have a meeting in July, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dick, I assume you'll fix those minutes before they
Yep.
are formally adopted?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Dick? There is no public hearing on this, so I don't see any other questions, Dick, so thank you very much for staff. So back to council. Council, how do you want to proceed? Councilmember Joy?
I move to approve, conditionally approve tax increment financing assistance from the South Billings Boulevard Tax Increment Finance District to Billings Hotel and Convention Center of up to $463,085 as recommended by the Sabura staff.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Councilmember Kennedy? Discussion, Councilmembers Joy, Kennedy, would either of you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have had many TIF applications from South Billings on business development, increasing business opportunities, business investment in the south side. And I don't know if any of you have gone down King Avenue East recently, but there are a lot of shopping opportunities, and employment opportunities. It's really looking very thriving. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, further discussion, Councilmember Neese?
Mayor, this is a project I likely would vote in favor of, but I think this project has got too many issues with it, just in the procedural process, that I'm not comfortable with voting for moving this forward. I'm going to vote against this because I think the documentation that we've looked at really does contain, if this had come to us and it had already been corrected in the minutes, and that would be fine. If it came back to us at another time with the minutes corrected, showing that this actual was a recusal, but they did leave the room as we're hearing, I may support something like this. I think the other issue, I think that's the biggest issue. I think we need to be careful of when we're approving documents that are not presented to us correctly. And so I'm not going to support it this time, but if it were to fail and come back to us again, more than likely with the correct documentation, with no question as far as the valuability of who was there at that meeting, I would think it would pass. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Rupsis?
Thank you, Mayor. Dick, just real quick, this is something that kind of talked about a lot over the last few years, this idea of the expected increase in taxable value kind of driving our ROI. What I'd like to encourage you to do, as well as the other TIF districts to do, is say a year after the project is completed and we've started paying out the TIF, we should have the property appraisals on that. Give us an update back and says, look, this is what we estimated it would be. This is what it actually turned out to be after the first year. And then we can just use that for learnings going forward to know how much we should be trusting this 80% of project cost as a value. It's not really a question there, just something to consider for the future.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment out that Councilman Boyette mentioned that I should have a email to all of you council people on a certain, like once a month maybe. And this is something I could definitely include in that, or I could bring it back to the council meeting, whichever you, okay?
Thank you very much. I just want to second that. I've made the suggestion before, not just in Sabura, but in every TIF district. We need to be going back and actually determining how realistic that 80% number is. There's a lot of variables there. Councilmember Neese?
Mayor, I just want to echo that because that has come up in the past, and we don't see that. And when we see management change within the TIFs, they don't hear what we had talked about before. I recommend that they actually be changed in the MOUs, so that that's one of the matrix they have to bring back to us, or make sure that's part of their reports that they bring to us, so we can actually see some of that. That way it's in documentation for whoever's managing those TIFs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agree. The only thing, a comment I'll make is convention business brings in tens of millions of dollars of economic activity in our community every year. But I believe the most recent statistics are that our convention business has declined more than 25% in recent years due to a single factor, and that's the lack of sizable and quality convention facilities. What we have is old and too small, and so we leave tens of millions of dollars on the table in lost business because we do not have those facilities anywhere in town. So this will not solve that problem, but it will go a long way toward the, helping reduce that problem. So, which is great. Any further discussion on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, the motion again is for approval, consistent with the staff recommendation. Item number 4, if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition, Councilmember Neese, and the motion passes then 10-1. That concludes item number 4. On to item number 5. Council, it's 7:30. Why don't we take a brief break, come up, finish up the last item. Let's try to come back as close to 7:35 as possible.
Could you give them some help?
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. We left off with items 5A. I'm going to ask Tony to read both items 5A and 5B because my understanding is the idea is, because they both involve the Mitchell Court project, we'll have a combined presentation dealing with both the home funding request, which is 7A, but also the TIF grant request, 7B. And then we'll come back. My recommendation to council is that we first focus questions on 7A, since these are separate items. We'll deal with that, and then we can focus questions on 7B and, 5A and 5B, and take those separately and in order. But again, the presentation, there'll be some overlap. With that, back to Tony. Tony, would you read 5A and 5B, please?
Mitchell Court. Home funding to Mitchell Court LLLP for the new construction of Mitchell Court project. Community Development Board recommends approval. B, tax increment financing assistance from the South Billings Boulevard Tax Increment Finance District to GL Development for Mitchell Court Apartments, a maximum of $500,000. Suburban Board recommends approval.
Very good. We'll turn over to our presenters, and they can go through both these as they feel best.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight seeking approval for home funding for Mitchell Court. With me, I have Jean Lure and Andrew Shanania online. I hope I said his name right. So Mitchell Court, it'll be 32 units of affordable housing. Should this loan be approved, it would be 6 units of home funding. 3 of those units will be 1 bedroom, 2 units will be 2 bedrooms, and 1 unit will be 3 bedrooms. All 32 units will be for households 60% and lower area median income. The funding being sought after is $1.2 million in home funding, which will be a loan payable through cash flow in the project. The loan will be secured via recorded deed restriction, trust indenture, restrictive covenants, and promissory note. So as of right now, they have leveraged tax credits, the Montana Board of Housing Coal Trust Family Homes Loan, Montana Health Foundation Loan, and state home funds. Those ones, they've been secured and approved. Tonight, you're looking at the $500,000 for the Suburban tax increment, and then the $1.2 million in home funds. So with this given leverage funding, the $1.2 million in requested funding is a very small percentage of the overall project cost. And we're under the maximum subsidy limits. Gene here, he has extensive knowledge in developing housing with federal funds and low-income housing tax credits. So you can tell about the project itself.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. The, as I listened to your discussion today on infill, this is a great infill project. I've got a few pictures of the site as it exists, if anybody's interested in them. But, we built a companion project right next door of 38 units, Jackson Court. The deed restrictions, the income restrictions, the rent restrictions that you heard about earlier tonight, and that previously applied to, that do apply to Jackson Court, all apply to Mitchell Court as well. It's the 32 units of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments I believe will be around as a social asset in Billings for many years to come. There's an absolute deed restriction on them for these purposes for 50 years out of the chutes. And in all likelihood, at some time toward the 25, 30-year period, there will be somebody that comes in and does another round of tax credits that creates another forward deed restriction on them. So just to rehabilitate them, because over time they wear out some. The funding package that is in your packet has been committed, is available. The total project cost from our viewpoint is $11.33 million. As the Councilman Rupes pointed out, it's about $350,000 a unit, which is currently the Montana Board of Housing cap. And they're the folks that provide some of the loan money and some of the and the tax credits. The investors in the project is Glacier Bank. They're the purchasers of the credits. They were also the purchasers in Mitchell Court, and I've done a variety of projects with them. They've got a good staff. They know what they're doing in that area. I think I heard a comment earlier about the housing authority's 7,000 member waiting list and kind of our assumption that there were 1,200 folks that would fit into this, that needed housing. And I don't think those two are different. As you look at the incomes folks will need to pay their rent in this project, as the market study folks slice how many folks need a 1-bedroom, how many need a 2-bedroom, and how many need a 3-bedroom based on family size, and how many folks have the incomes in those 1, 2, and 3-bedroom demographics to pay that income or that rent. That's where the 1,200 comes from. If we put studio apartments in it, it would be a higher number. If we put some 4-bedroom units in it, it would be a higher number. I think the Housing Authority's wait list of 7,000 is absolutely correct. I think our market study folks who looked very specifically at this unit and income configuration came up with a conservative estimate of 1,200 folks available. I think they're both right. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Very good. Thank you, Gene. How has the Jackson Court project come out?
Great, from my perspective. I think we've got 3 1-bedroom units left to lease. The requirements to lease them, and they are a lease between us and the tenants, require a lot of income verification and certification and eligibility stuff. And the management company's done a good job working through that. The lease up went a couple of months quicker than we thought it might. So we've got, I think, 3 1-bedroom units yet to be leased. All the rest of them have been. I'm really pleased with the project and how it's turned out. From my perspective, we're happy to be in the South Side. I think it's doing some nice things down there, and I think Jackson Court contributed to that. And I think given. I think Mitchell Court can do the same thing. It's a little bit of a different design, constrained largely by the lot size, but I'm very pleased with Jackson Court. I'm very comfortable that Mitchell Court will be a success as well. So I look forward to doing it.
Good, thank you. Other questions for Gene? Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you. When they did Jackson Court, one of the issues we talked about was the ditch that
Yeah.
ran along there. Will that be any issues with it going into this Mitchell Court, or any ideas?
You know, I've visited some with your city staff previously about this. This was Wyeth Friday some months ago. And I know the ditch ownership and structure is difficult to nail down. I don't think the ditch will negatively impact what we're doing there. I think, as I understand it from Wyeth, at least from a staff standpoint, he's got kind of a long-term desire to sort through the ownership of that ditch and hopefully get it cleaned up. And I think that would be a benefit to the projects we're doing down there. I think the walking path that you've installed off the end of Mitchell is very nice and a great asset to both our projects and to the neighborhood.
Very good. Councilmember Denise?
Thank you, Mayor. Some along the same lines as what Councilmember Boyette was asking, because I remember when you did the Mitchell Court, we were concerned about the Mitchell Avenue there, kind of dent-ending whether it would go through or not, but it looks like you have a pathway or something going through there. So is there going to be a connectivity between these two projects at all?
Technically, they're separate ownerships. Each are owned by a limited partnership. The management of both will be the same. The principles in the partnerships are the same in each project. So, you know, from a real legalistic standpoint, there's not a relationship between partnership A and B. I think we will have an agreement. The Mitchell Court project will have an agreement with Jackson Court that allows the use of the Jackson Court office space for the Mitchell Court tenants. With two projects that close together with the same rules, regulations, management company, and ownership structure, it didn't make a lot of sense to spend money creating a new, to spend money on another office. There's the partnership agreements from both the bank, the State Board of Housing, and the IRS that oversees the tax credit regulations enjoys a lot of legal advice to all parties along the way. And normally I would think it might be a simple thing to say, yeah, this project can use that project's office space, but I think it is a simple thing. I think it'll happen, but it's going to take an agreement. But formally, that's the only connection between the two of them,
Okay.
other than the common ownership.
And I appreciate that, and maybe I wasn't clear my question. When I talk about the connectivity, it'd be more like pedestrian and driving and access and things like that. So we'll even though these are private, separate private companies and different developments, will there be any kind of activity or ability for people to ride their bikes through from one to the other to get over to Jackson Street or back and forth or to Mitchell Court or Mitchell Avenue?
You bet. And I think largely that's through your pathway that you've put in there. But, we don't have a fence between, we've got Jackson Court, your pathway, and Mitchell Court. And from our viewpoint, we're not putting up any barriers to that access. There's not a common auto path through it. But, as part of the TIF proposal that was funded with Jackson Court, we put a playground in there that we have some responsibility to make available to the community generally down there. So the folks at Mitchell Court can certainly access that. There will be walk-in access between the two pretty simply and easily.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other, Councilmember Shaw?
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Okay. I move to approve home funding to Mitchell Court LLP for the new construction of Mitchell Court project as recommended by the CD Board.
Second by Councilmember Gulick. Councilmember Shaw, Gulick, would either of you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, great project. Thank you guys for doing Jackson Court. Thank you for this second level. It's so needed. I think this is a great area for it. I'm very excited about it. Council has also been asking for projects like this from community development for a scale. And so it's really nice to see a big project that we can invest what is for the city a significant chunk of community development money, but into an area that I think everybody feels very passionately about affordable housing. So really exciting to see. I just have one question. You mentioned the playground being open at the other one, and I remember that being a big, factor of like, what a great thing for the community. I see you've got a little play area here. Is that kind of the same deal, or is it?
We're still kind of, I think given the proximity of parks and the play area at the other one, and as we work through the budget, I don't think we're going to put in a formal playground here. We may have we'll have some grass and some green space, but again, given the benefit of all the lawyers we have, folks might get nervous about kids walking across, 500 feet down the street to play in a playground, but I happen to think that's probably a good idea, so.
So something different, but also open for the community to recreate a little bit.
Yeah, it'll, the design of the buildings are a little different, just given the limited size of the second lot we're doing. But from my perspective, I think it will operate as kind of one project, one community, one resource for the community, so.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm excited about doing it as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Gulick, did you want to address your second, or?
Maybe just a brief thing. I enjoyed visiting the Jackson Court when it was nearly complete, and I appreciated how the site layout was done such that the trail that could provide the connectivity we want, how the units fronted onto that. It's good from a SEPTED perspective, and wrote a letter in support saying to that effect, and look forward to similarly successful project for the south side. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Before we proceed to a vote on item 5A, Councilor Bernice?
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to, again, appreciate the work that we have the private investment doing here in this area, because it's long overdue. And so I think this is really a way to change the neighborhood. I would recommend, may not recommend, suggest unsolicited advice from someone who's not a developer, but I enjoy it, is gardening. And so maybe in the play area, you'd have a community garden there, because that brings neighbors together and stuff like that. And so that may be something that you consider in the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Bernice will promise to weed every Friday in the spring when he's done with my house.
We don't have to weed. We can reuse our newspapers to prevent weeds from growing.
That's very good.
I can show you how to do that.
That's good. That's good. I did not know that. All right. Any further discussion before we proceed to the vote? Don't see any. So if the motion is for approval of item 5A. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item 5A. Dina, do you have anything further on 5B before we ask Dick to give background on that? Okay, then we'll turn it over to Dick. We know a lot more about the project, but Dick, there will be some specifics on the TIF application. So,
thank you, Councilman Mayor Cole. This project does a couple things that are really important on that south side. If you guys have seen the area where they're going to put these Mitchell courts, it's a disaster. And so one of our big goals is removal of blight. This is going to do that. The second one is it's going to provide housing on that south side. Again, it's very nice. Jackson Courts is excellent. It's really beautiful, and this will be the same, I'm sure. And so that is very needed, and my hope is that maybe they'll consider another project like this after they get this one done. With that said, this project will provide 32 additional apartments for rent in our district when completed. These apartments are really needed in our suburban district. It will provide approximately 40 to 50 jobs during construction. The request is only 4.28% of the total project, with 16.67% allowable. The apartment complex is directly to the south of the new Jackson Court Apartments. This is a very blighted area and will greatly enhance the property, and I would please ask you to approve this request for TIF assistance.
Okay, questions for Dick. Dick, I just want to push back a little bit. You know, the staff report identifies that number that you said of ratio of 24 to 1, private money to public money, but the reality is they're getting $5.3 million of federal tax credits. The loan that we just approved, which are government dollars, there's other government subsidies in here. At what point is enough in the way of subsidy? And I'll give Gene, of course, a chance to comment on that issue as well.
Well, my feeling on this is if you're ingenious enough to be able to go get those grants, more power to you. And our goal is to get the development down there and get it cleaned up. And how they finance it doesn't really bother me. You know, we want that project to succeed and get it done. And so that's kind of my board's thought on that.
Okay, very good. And I'll let Gene comment if that's okay, if he wants to.
You're exactly right, Mr. Mayor. You know, there's the money in this thing is public resource. The tax credits are created by Congress. They're allocated to the state of Montana. The project will sell the tax credits to Glacier Bank, which is a private entity. They're investing in the project through their $5.3 million purchase. They're taking a risk. Are the tax credits public money? Is the home money from both you folks and the state public money? You bet. The tax credit is really foregone revenue to the U.S. Treasury. The private part of it for Glacier Bank is that they invest in it. There's a market for the credits, just like there's a market for cattle or grain or corn or copper. I've sold tax credits over the years for 93 cents on the dollar. These are going for about 83 cents on the dollar. And that's a result of the market changes. A lot of that's driven by private market appetite. A lot of it's driven by interest rates and by ultimately a rate of return to the private investor. In this case, Glacier Bank. Under the IRS rules and regulations, the private investor has to stay in the partnership for 15 years. They can lose money during that 15 years if the project, A, doesn't get built, B, doesn't rent to eligible people, C, some calamity befalls it and it ceases to operate. So the private entity has money at risk. I'm a private entity and I make a lot of guarantees on all of it that I've got money at risk. The bank's confident in this project's success, I think, for a variety of reasons. As you folks like Billings, I think Glacier Bank does as well. I like doing business in Billings. It's been really good to me. It is a weird combination of public and private. I think one of the questions is how much is enough? And $350,000 a unit on 32 units is expensive. The money that's in that budget will be paid to banks for loans, interest, engineers, construction workers, because we've got both city and state home funds in it, we will have a total of 12 home eligible units in the project. And that triggers Davis-Bacon wage requirements. So as your TIF funds require state prevailing wage payments, the project by its funding source will require Davis-Bacon. When we add it up, that's what it costs us. Most all of it gets paid to architects, engineers, construction workers, subcontractors, landscaping. The reason the state has moved their cost per unit from what used to be, I think about $250,000 to $280,000 over 20 years, is because costs have gone up. You know, now it's $350. That's what it costs.
Okay, very good, thank you. Other questions for Dick about the TIF application, or for Gene or other staff? Councilmember Aspenlider?
I move to conditionally approve tax increment financing assistance from South Billings Boulevard Tax Increment Finance District to GL Development for Mitchell Court Apartments, a maximum of $500,000 as recommended by SBURA Board.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. Can I just ask staff for some clarification? The staff recommendation, of course, is $483,082, whatever it is, but it's a maximum of 500. So I guess we're not capping it at the 483. We're capping it at the 500, depending on what the costs actually come in. It looks like Andy would like to comment on that. So, Chris, if that's okay, I'll ask Andy. Why that differential?
Yeah, I'm not sure. One of them was 483 tonight, and the other one was 500. And I believe Billings Hotel was 483.
Yeah, I think Billings Hotel was.
So
Billings Hotel was 463 and this one's 500.
Yeah, I may have
I
made a mistake.
apologize. I'm mixing up my
Okay, good.
my TIF application. So
I do
okay.
copy and paste occasionally,
Yeah,
so I may
I'm
have
sorry.
made a mistake.
I'm sorry. I have four something on my mind. Scratch that. Never mind. Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Councilmember Ripsis. Okay. So the motion is made and seconded. Councilmember Aspenlider, Councilmember Ripsis, would you like to address your motion, Councilmember Ripsis?
I did. Actually, Mayor, I just had one further question. I think I missed something or misheard something. Did you say something like 12 units are going to be income restricted?
No.
I just caught a snippet out of that, and I think I misheard it or something.
Out of the 32 units, and this is a bizarre couple of formulas that lead to a answer that comes out of HUD. So it can be a little strange when you have HUD involved in an IRS low-income housing project. That's why not many people do them. But there are 32 units. All of them are income restricted and rent restricted. The restrictions are a little different between just the tax credit units and the 12 units that have home funds in them. The restrictions for the home units in terms of rent and in terms of income are a little lower, essentially.
Okay.
So
thank you.
100% of them are rent restricted. The home units will be a little cheaper to rent, and the folks that can rent them have to have a little bit lower income generally. So, you bet.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion before we proceed to a vote? Okay. Motion is approval, item 5B, consistent with the staff recommendation. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item 5B. Go forth and build. Thank you very much. Good luck. That concludes our regular agenda. We'll move on to public comment on any non-agenda items. And then we'll come back to this item. Is there any public comment on items not on our agenda this evening? There's nobody coming forward, so we'll close that element. Under council initiatives, are there any council initiatives before I hand this to Councilmember Boyette? Oh, okay, thank you very much. We'll address this and we'll come back to Councilmember Boyette. I'll turn it to Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, members of the council, as it was brought up a couple weeks ago that I needed to have a council initiative, so I put it together. I talked with Councilman Aspenlinder, Councilwoman Owen, and what we're addressing is budget and employee pay. A little bit of history. Currently, the city approves the percentage ask and the lump sum is allocated to the city administrator for distribution. The raises are discretionary and the council does not have a say in the process. The whole process lacks transparency and an overall plan. Currently, the upper 20 directors and assistant directors were given a substantial raise from a salary study and tweaked by HR and the city administrator. The structure was not brought before the council, and only until the labor negotiations were the council members aware. The 5% salary approved that will go to the city administrator for allocations. The plan was not a 5% raise for employees, but a lump sum given and used in a rate study not seen by the council. Longevity has been given for many years in the city. The city administrator has decided to eliminate this and increase the salaries of some of the employees. This was not approved by the council. And going back, I was told it was talked about, but was not in previous councils. So what I'm bringing forward is steps in this initiative, and I would like this to go to our next study, what do we call them, study sessions? And to come forward, and this will also go to the Budget Committee. The steps in this initiative would be city administrator to provide the salary study and changes to the council, study and changes to council members. The city administrator provides the 3-year progression of raises to the top 20 administrative salaries to the council. The plan for the distribution of the 5% lump sum approved in the budget. We'd like to see that plan. Transparency to the employees and the council. The Budget Committee would start with salary budget discussions during the year of budgeting, and this process should be shared with the council, and public dollars should be transparent. For transparency, then, all salaries published in the budgets. All of these are budget issues that needs to be, for transparency, worked through the Budget Committee and also on the council, because there are people on the council that were unaware of a lot of this, especially when you're approving a budget. So we're asking at this time to move this forward to the study commission for the study meeting for discussion, and it will come up then at the budget at our budget committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, and Kevin, I assume you got a copy of this in front of you, right? Okay.
Now, yes.
Okay. So just to clarify, again, the question before us now is whether to approve this. I guess we're getting a motion to add this to our next work session agenda for further discussion on these 8 points.
Correct.
So,
Mayor, I'll second that motion so we can keep discussion going.
okay, so that's the motion. We're not approving these 8 points or anything. It's just to put it on an agenda. And you said the next agenda, so that would be 2 weeks from now.
Correct.
Correct? And the motion was made and seconded by Councilmember Neese.
The next work session is next week.
I'm sorry, Councilor Shaw?
The next work session is next week, not
Oh, I apologize, you're right, yeah.
But it's already been set, so it'll be 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, so not the following, but 3 weeks from today.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, very good. Thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, so that's what's before you. I'm going to just ask the city administrator to comment as he wants, and we'll come back to council. And Chris, you're looking at your calendar. Was there something you wanted to bring to our attention?
Just to be clear, we do have 5 Mondays in July. So the next work session is actually August the 5th. So that'll be 4 weeks from tonight, counting weeks. This item is on the Budget and Finance agenda for this Wednesday to start this dialogue. I hadn't seen this until tonight, but as we said, this is just kind of kicking the conversation off. The only thing I take exception to is there were conversations before the implementation of the pay data for directors and assistant directors. No, it wasn't a city council formal decision that was made, but council members were brought in, talked with and through what was happening as your administrator to make sure that I had general support, was not asking for permission, but wanted to make sure council understood what and why those changes are made. And so just to clarify that piece, because it says outright they were not aware, and just want to correct that for the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris, people are going to want to know whether you support, oppose, or are fine with this. You don't have to comment on that, but people are going to want your comments at some point, probably tonight. Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Joy.
I don't like things being sprung on me, so I understand where this is going. I'm going to vote no on this because I have just gotten it. I need more than 2 minutes to review it and think about it before I can vote to support something. So I would recommend that we wait on voting. That's just a recommendation.
Okay, very good. I just wanted, was this what we raised 2 weeks ago, though? Did you?
Yes.
You did give some
Yes.
heads up that was coming, but
Nothing
not
in
the
writing.
document.
Yes,
Gotcha.
I'm saying I need something in writing.
Yeah.
Which I
And
just got.
apologize. I think I said I was going to send you that form, and I didn't.
Mayor, I was supposed to get a form. I was supposed to get a form from the city administrator. I did not. I put this together. I visited with the other 2 council people and brought it here tonight because this was the next time to bring it forward. And I think I was told that a council person said I was out of order. So I'm bringing this, what we are supposed to do. So tonight, it's here so we can move it on to have more of the discussion. And you have every opportunity to vote it up or vote it down, and you'll have more time to talk more about it in the future. But I am just doing what it was stated a couple weeks ago.
Very good.
Could I
Thank you.
respond to that?
Please, and Councilmember Joy.
Certainly, I understand that, and I don't have any objection to a specific form or this. That's fine. If I'd had this a couple days ago, where I could have looked through it, I would have appreciated that. So that's just my feedback for when people bring forward initiatives. I just need a little more time with the written document.
Very good. Councilmember Joy and Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you. This is a question for Assistant City Attorney Kevin Ifland. Point number 3, the plan to, I'm sorry.
He's been demoted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Assistant City Administrator Ifland. Did I get it right? Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, geez, I don't want to be, and we're talking about money. Number 3, point number 3, the plan for the distribution of the 5% lump sum approved in the budget. Is that a negotiated, how the 5%, what part of a pay raise if we're saying a 5%? And I assume that this 5% is actually referencing the negotiated contracts,
No.
or is that the administrative 5%? Thank you.
I'm sorry, do you want Councilmember Kennedy to clarify his
yeah.
intent? Go ahead, Councilmember Kennedy.
It was approved in the budget a 5% number that was stated towards the end of the budget meeting that evening that City Administrator Kirkowski said, now that is a 5% lump sum, but not everyone will be receiving 5%. That will be put into the system, and some may get more, some may get less. And that's the way it was stated, and but I want a discussion on the 5% lump sum, the total amount of dollars that was approved by the council, and I would like to see how it's going to be distributed.
Okay.
Just a clarification from the city administrator. Previous budgets, we have also given that part, the non-negotiated, non-bargaining part of administrative staff raises of, say, 3%. In years past, so I'm thinking that this 5%, we've already done this many budgets before. Maybe you could clarify lump sum as to what you actually meant by that. Thank you.
So, council member, or mayor, council member Joy, each year as you're adopting a budget, and we have to estimate what payroll costs are going to be, we select a number. Post-COVID, we're in a scenario where we have a labor contract that's up each year. Police, fire, Teamsters, 3-year contracts. It is absolutely the case that anything and any dollar we spend in this organization is a public dollar, and therefore we can and will be transparent about how those dollars are spent. It's also a challenge in the state of Montana that we cannot have a closed executive session to strategize on labor negotiations. So it is a fact that we don't commonly have a discussion that sets these limits or these parameters as there's a team at the city negotiating a labor contract at the same time that we're putting a budget together. So that's a part of this challenge. Specific to the 5%, yes, this year's budget, in light of what we've seen with inflation and other factors over the past several years, we created the budget in which we're in right now, assuming a 5% adjustment is where we would land on labor contracts, recognizing 2 of them are in place. 1 is in negotiation. It's tentatively agreed to, but I remind everybody, it has not been voted on by the labor group. That's later this week, or by you. And non-represented pay, which represents between Teamsters and non-represented about 800 employees, 350 on the non-represented side, about 450 on the Teamster side. All of that is still in play, and that budget authority is key to understanding ultimately how we implement a pay structure as to how we can adjust either the matrix or move numbers around relative to jobs and positions. So, like I said, Councilmember Gulick and I had a conversation last week because he chairs the Budget and Finance Committee. We put this on that agenda for Wednesday of this week to begin moving down this path. I've got nothing to hide there in how our structure works, what we've implemented. I would just ask you to be conscientious of those other things that are going on simultaneously with this. Both A and B, as I know you all can appreciate, when it comes to having conversations about compensation, the public sector is different. Private is all public information, but there are great sensitivities and great strong opinions on either side, whether folks are overpaid, underpaid, fairly. So I just ask that we be conscientious of ultimately a goal of being fair relative to compensation. So hope that answers your question. This budget we're in right now did include 5% as an estimate. You're aware that's not where we landed on our Teamster contract. That contract has a higher cost than that, so we will have to do other things in the budget, not though requiring fee changes or tax changes in order to implement that contract, if in fact it's approved by the Teamsters later this week, and if in fact it's approved by this body later this month or in early August. Thank you.
But if you, Mayor, just to comment on this, if you would read it, the plan for the distribution of the 5% lump sum approved in the budget, it didn't deal with the Teamsters or any other bargaining unit. It was the 5% that was approved by the council for raises for the non-union employees.
Okay, that's the focus of the initiative. We understand that. Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe this is for Gina. Since I've been here, we've never had an initiative brought forward and voted on it the same night that it was presented. We've always had the initiative presented to the council and then a vote later. Is there any legal pause or comment, or is this a policy that has been understood, or is there a policy about once an initiative is brought forward and then when we vote on it?
Council Member Boyette and Mayor and Council, your rules of, Section 2-214 sets forth the order of business for regular meetings, and that simply allows for council initiatives. The procedure that council has come to establish is not required by city code. The city code simply says the section of the agenda is reserved for individual council member requests for future legislative or staff action. These shall be limited to giving direction to staff to assist in formulating policies, work plans, et cetera, for future consideration of the city council. An initiative moves forward by majority vote of the city council. So there's no reason you can't vote on this. You've all just simply sort of established a procedure of how you want to do that.
Thank you. Councilmember Aspenlier, Councilmember Ripsis?
So to alleviate some of these, concerns about having some thought put into this and to give us a chance to talk about it on Wednesday and kind of work through this, if Councilman Kennedy is okay, I would ask Mr. Mayor that you put this on our agenda in 2 weeks, notice it, put it as an agenda item, and then we can formally discuss and vote up or down. Is that?
That'd be great.
And I'd say that's completely up to the
3, at our next regular business.
next regular business meeting. Okay, we have the document in front of us. It could be refined or furthered or changed or not, but at least it's there. That's completely up to the movement and the person who made the second.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, and I forget who made the second. Councilmember Neese made the second?
I am okay with what the movement wants.
Okay, then I'll recognize Councilmember Rowan.
Mayor, I'm just a little perplexed here procedurally, as I often find myself at this point in the evening. I had heard that Councilmember Kennedy simply wanted this put on a future work session agenda. I did not hear a request for approval of the substance of what he's proposing. So
That's
what
correct.
exactly is
We
going to?
are not voting on the substance at all.
Agreed.
Purely to put on the agenda or not.
So council members are asking to delay for 2 weeks whether or not we discuss this?
You got it. Yeah.
That seems unnecessary.
The formal vote on further action. It would not be on the substantive decision. It would just be delaying this discussion by those 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Because, or 3 weeks, because of the fifth week.
Mayor, is it further your understanding that that would preclude us discussing this at the budget committee or at a work session between now and that business meeting? Because I just simply heard this was going to go on a work session agenda, which doesn't seem like a heavy lift.
That's up to the council, but it certainly would not preclude the budget committee from addressing it at their meeting this week, and I would highly recommend that, Chris and Councilmember Neese? And I'm sorry, I recognize Councilmember Ripsis, but Councilor Ripsis, and Chris, and Councilor Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say what I thought we were trying to get to was anytime we had an initiative that we wanted to do, we would send it out early so that it could be on the agenda and it could be noticed and the initiative could be attached to the agenda and there would be the opportunity to provide public comment on that. And I think that's all that we would be doing by having it 2 weeks from now during the council initiative section to put it on a future work session agenda, is providing the public the idea that we are taking a vote on something that, criticality of putting it on the work session or otherwise. In this case, it's just a work session. Other initiatives could be more involved, but I think that noticing was what we were trying to get to over the last couple initiatives as we were working through this process and trying to clean it up. It does take an extra week or two, but obviously we're in the middle of the budget session. Nothing's going to be changing, today or tomorrow. I think it behooves us to just kind of focus on the process a little bit here.
Yeah, and I would agree. That's a very good policy. It's just not current policy or something required, but it's a good goal. Councilmember, or Chris and Councilmember Bernice?
At some point, I guess, some direction on whether you want me to be bringing this conversation to the Budget and Finance Committee, or is this a conversation you want to have with the full council on a Monday night, will help us as staff prepare for those discussions. Because like I said, it's on the agenda for Wednesday to start it, but they, in fairness, don't know what their role is. I don't know what you want their role to be, but that's where we were starting the dialogue, because I thought that's what made sense as Mr. Gulick and I talked about the agenda.
Okay. I think the default will be the Budget Committee can talk about it unless we give contrary discussion or there's a consensus on that. Councilmember Neese?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm okay with moving this forward now or later, but I think it would, to be fair for Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Aspenliner, thank you, we've been on, most of us been on council for long and understand the initiative process, have seen the forum, have used it and understand. I think maybe we just didn't do a good service to them to really explain the initiative process during their orientation. So that's the reason I don't mind seconding and moving this forward, because Councilmember Kennedy has already discussed this. I think I agree with you, Councilmember Rupsis, that the process we would like to get to is announce these things sooner, get the documents in email to us so that we have more understanding of what we're looking at when we get here. I think this is simple enough. It's going to go through the Budget Committee first. It's going to be 3 weeks before it gets to it. I don't see any reason with, again, the movement wants to delay it. That's fine. I'll go along with that, but I don't see any reason why we don't just put it out on the work session for a few weeks from now. By that time, the Budget Committee has already looked at it and they have some more input and we'll have a better understanding. Then when we look at the work session, we can look at it and say, yeah, that's great. No, thank you. We don't want to do this, or let's do something different. So it just gives us a more time to actually work on it between now and then, knowing it's going to be on the agenda for the work session on the 4th. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Wade, again, my understanding of the motion was withdrawn, but,
I just wonder, when is the next budget meeting?
Wednesday.
So it'll
Wednesday.
be, okay, thank you.
Okay. My understanding was the motion was, even though there was some discussion about it, the motion was withdrawn. And that is what will happen. It'll go on the, it'll be formally noticed for the next business meeting. And that's what's happening. Is that correct? Is that correct?
July 22nd.
July 22nd is the date?
Is that what you?
I don't know. Is that our next business meeting, July 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay, July 22nd. Okay, stay tuned. Be back July 22nd. The Budget Committee will talk about this further Wednesday. Okay? I'm going to move on then to Councilmember Boyette. Assuming there wasn't any other initiatives, because he did have a final item here.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm referring to June 24th, item 1H. And what I'd like to do is have a motion to reconsider the resolution approving municipal court judge salaries increase.
And, okay, motion made, second by Councilmember Aspenlider. Councilmember Boyette, would you provide a little more background on your motion?
Right. I was reading the staff report that said During the fiscal year 2025 budget process, Councilmember Aspen Leiter brought forward a budget amendment to transfer $40,000 from the city attorney's budget to the municipal court budget to increase the judges' salaries. The council approved the budget amendment. So we did in fact move $40,000 from one pot to another pot. But then we voted against giving the salaries. So my quandary is, we have $40,000 sitting in a pot over here, and the judges don't have any salary increase. Whether we do whatever, I just wanted the council to be aware of that and bring that for one more discussion. So we can figure out what to do with the $40,000 and what do we do with the salaries.
Okay, very good. Councilor Asplund, do you want to speak to your second?
I mean, I'm not going to belabor the point. My position is clear. We had that conversation through the budget and through the budget amendment. I'll wear the fact that I was not there to vote. And so I should have asked for that to be postponed to a different agenda, knowing that I wasn't there to fight for my own budget amendment and the resolution that needed to follow. So I appreciate Councilman Boyette bringing this back for discussion. I don't know that there's any more that we all need to discuss. I mean, I think we all know where we're all at there. So I encourage your support to clean up what we already approved in the budget. Thanks.
Very good. So Council, you have a motion for reconsideration. Again, just to remind you what the process works. If this passes, it does not go to the merits. It just puts that issue back onto our agenda for a future meeting, which according to our ordinance is the discretion of the mayor as to where that would go. I would assume it would go on our next business meeting 3 weeks from now, July 22nd. Unless there was some reason to move it back. So, but I'm not hearing that, so that would be my assumption. So at which point we would have further discussion on the merits of the original motion from June 24th. I saw Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Ripsis, Councilmember Bernice.
Just a question of procedure. The person making the motion has to be on the winning side for reconsideration. Does the second have to be on the winning side for a second?
No.
The, Councilmember Joy, Mayor and Council, the motion to reconsider must be made by somebody on the prevailing side. So that's appropriate. And then the second can be anybody. It doesn't have to be the prevailing side.
Thank you. Councilmember Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just remind council that the reason that this was not approved last time was because we heard some very concerning news during executive session, not 3 weeks ago, about potential actions that may be coming that would significantly affect the city attorney's ability to defend the city in these cases. So that's where that budget was taken from. And immediately after we approved that budget, we heard that, hey, wait, we shouldn't maybe think about reconsidering doing this. And so we didn't approve that resolution. I have no problem with that $40,000 just sitting there in the municipal court budget until such point as we decide that, yes, we're going to be okay for the year, or we need to do a budget amendment to move it back to the city attorney's budget so that they have enough budget to defend the city as they need to. So that's why we did it. I think it doesn't do us any harm to let it sit there for a little bit until we get some more clarification on upcoming actions. And so I'm going to oppose the motion to reconsider tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you, Councilmember Rupsis. I don't see any reason why it just can't sit there, but I do want to hear from Andy on that because it was a question I had. We approved a budget, moving that money, and then we didn't approve the use of that money. So can you explain to us exactly what would typically happen to that money? Is that money available to be spent by the courts, or would that money just sit there?
Council, Mayor, so that would increase the court's budget authority. I think they've technically could use that for anything under the purview of the courts, but generally our policy is if you want to use wages to fund something different, it needs city administrator approval. So if they were going to largely deviate from their staffing request, in this case the salaries, they would need to get city administrator approval for that.
Okay, Mayor, quick follow-up on that?
Go ahead.
So you don't see any issue with us 2 months from now doing an amendment to put that money back from courts over to the city courts?
Yeah, for
or to
budget-
the attorneys?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Neese, if there was a budget amendment needed, at any point in time, we could bring that back over. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Had I recognized anybody else, further discussion on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to the vote. Again, the motion is for whether or not to put the substantive question back on the agenda for our next business meeting in 3 weeks. Is the nature of the motion clear? Okay, so this is going to be a close vote, so I'll just ask for a show of hands. If in favor of the motion to put the issue back on the agenda, please raise your hand. Voting in favor of the motion for reconsideration are Council members Shaw, Joy, Cole, Kennedy, Aspenleiter, Tidswell, and Boyette. If voting in opposition, raise your hand. Voting in opposition, Council members Neese, Owen, Rupsis, and I apologize, and Gulick. So motion passes 7-4. Chris, if you can make arrangements for that to go on the agenda on the again, our next business meeting. That was not part of the motion, but that would be my direction. I didn't hear anything to the contrary. So, okay, so that concludes that item, and our evening of fun and excitement tonight. No, okay, Councilmember Neese.
I'm sorry, this is breaking protocol and procedure, but I just did have a question. I noticed during one of the presentations, Kevin, that as we were speaking, our words were coming up on the screen. Is that a new software that the city is investing in and starting going to be published online, or how's that working?
So Councilmember Neese, I think it's just new to us with an upgrade in the presentation laptop. There's a setting on there that we can do that. By accident, quite honestly, from myself this evening, so.
Okay, I would say I was watching some of the words up there and they were not matching what people were saying, so.
Got to be a little careful
So
there.
the public should not take that as what was said. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's an important point to make. Thank you. Councilor Aspenleiter, you had a quick matter.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing procedurally that I was going to ask for some clarity on, we have a city ordinance that requires the agenda to be passed out to council before it's posted, and for the 6 months I've been here, I've never seen one before it's posted. So, I mean, can we get into a process of following that again?
Mayor and council member Aspenleiter, it's in the weekly report, so it's attached, I believe, once a month. Maybe it's every other week, but there's a pattern there where it's included, and they are projected agendas going forward for several months. So please, I mean, if you want a different process, we can have that discussion, but recognize that that is where it's found, and it does, until it's literally locked in and the agenda is created, it is a draft of what's coming before you over the next several months.
Very good, thank you. And with that, council, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Stay.